Chapter 1706. Planar Barrier Rumble. As soon as the golden-haired girl rode on the little the Chelan projection above the little Chelan merged with it. After merging with the Chelan projection, the little Chelan's aura soared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Early stage sage, mid-stage sage, late-stage sage. Bang! With a muffled sound, the little Chelan's aura soared to the limit of the immortal spirit realm. Perfect stage sage. Not good. Mo Chinya's expression changed drastically when he felt the terrifying aura emanating from the little Chelan. He hurriedly turned his head and wanted to leave this area. If he had left before the little Chelan's aura soared, he would have been able to leave smoothly. But now, it would be very difficult for him to leave smoothly. Swoosh! The little Chelan charged at Mo Chinya furiously. Smack! It raised its tail and whipped Mo Chinya's back fiercely. The burning sensation from his back made Mo Chinya grimace in pain. Where there's life, there's hope. Just you wait, I'll be back sooner or later. Mo Chinya glared fiercely at the little Chelan and Ningyu. Then, he burned his blood essence and tore open the void to quickly enter. Want to leave? Not so easy. Seeing that Mo Chinya wanted to leave, the golden-haired girl clenched her fists and said coldly, "No one can save you from becoming enemies with the Chelan clan." The little Chelan was even more furious than the golden-haired girl. With a loud roar, a terrifying shockwave shot out and followed Mo Chinya into the void. It didn't take long. Mo Chinya fell from the void. Crack, crack, crack. Mo Chinya's eyes became extremely gloomy. He gritted his teeth and said, "The Chelan clan has been scattered. It won't be so easy to kill me with a wisp of Chelan's will. I'll leave this place even if I have to be seriously injured." Bang! Bang! Mo Chinya kept hitting his chest with both hands. He seemed to have gone mad. Although Mo Chinya's body was already seriously injured, his aura was still rising rapidly. Oh no, he's going to display an aura surpassing perfect stage sage. This action caused Ningyu and the human demon's expressions to shift drastically. This was the immortal spirit realm. Once Mo Chinya unleashed his aura that surpassed the sage perfection stage, the entire immortal spirit realm would be destroyed. Since Mo Chinya dared to do this, it meant that he definitely had a way to leave the immortal spirit domain. Mo Chinya had a way to leave the immortal spirit domain, but Ningyu, the human demon, and even the golden-haired girl and little Chelan had no way to leave the immortal spirit domain. As long as the plane barrier of the immortal spirit realm locked onto the Chelan cave, Ningyu and the others would have to leave this place in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, they would definitely die. Ha ha! All of you must die. Mo Chinya laughed wildly after seeing Ningyu and the human demon's flustered expressions. All of you come out. Mo Chinya laughed wildly as he unleashed his aura without holding anything back. Shio! Mo Chinya had just unleashed his aura when the immortal spirit realm's plane barrier locked onto this place. At the same time, a terrifying pillar of light shot down from the heavens towards the Chelan cave. I'm not going to play with you guys anymore. Mo Chinya's lips curled up. Then, a strand of his primordial spirit separated from his body and tore through the void. The primordial spirit had escaped. In order to live, Mo Chinya didn't hesitate to abandon his body. Of course, when he abandoned his body, Mo Chinya also abandoned the last 3 Chelan fruits. What's going on? The immortal spirit realm's plane barrier made all the martial practitioners above the peak sky supreme level feel their hearts tremble. This trembling came from the depths of their hearts. Martial practitioners above the peak sky supreme level could completely feel the existence of the plane barrier. They knew very well that the plane barrier of the immortal spirit realm had 2 uses. First, it stopped the martial practitioners from the higher planes from descending. Second, it killed all the martial practitioners who surpassed the sage realm. Either of these 2 scenarios was enough to shake an immortal spirit realm expert. Now that the demon spirit realm was attacking the immortal spirit realm, if the martial practitioners from the higher planes descended at this time, it would be even worse for the immortal spirit realm. As for killing the martial practitioners who surpassed the sage realm, that was even more terrifying. When a martial practitioner who surpassed the sage realm unleashed a powerful attack right before their death, it could even destroy the entire immortal spirit realm. At this moment, almost all the strongest martial practitioners in the immortal spirit realm turned their gazes towards the Moling mountain range, towards the Qilin cave. What happened? In Giant Shield City, which was very close to the Moling mountain range, Elder Tianji's brows furrowed into a crescent shape. For some reason, no matter how much he tried, he couldn't divine what was going on. Try again. Elder Tianji gritted his teeth and tried again. Puffed. But Elder Tianji's second attempt still ended in failure. Risking his life to divine in the end, this was the first time in the last few decades that Elder Tianji had failed. Master, Zhou Shan immediately helped Elder Tianji to sit on a chair, and I said with concern, "Please don't divine anymore. I know what I'm doing." Elder Tianji waved his hand and said, "Go out. I want to be alone for a while." "Yes." Zhou Shan nodded, then moved his feet and left the room. However, when Zhou Shan left, his eyes revealed a sinister look. "Old fart, I've followed you for so long, but you still haven't taught me the divination art. I'll give you 3 more days. If you don't teach me the divination art after 3 days, don't blame me for being rude." Zhou Shan clenched his fists and turned to walk towards the Giant Shield City Lord's residence. Moling Mountain Range, Qilin Cave. Ning Yu and the human demon's expressions were extremely cold. Extremely cold. Mo Qinya had left. What should they do? The scene became very gloomy. Hide in the Qilin ring. The golden-haired girl on the little Qilin's back suddenly broke the silence. The Qilin ring is the ultimate treasure of the Qilin race. It might be able to withstand the impact of the planar barrier. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go in. The human demon didn't waste time. He leaped into the air and turned into a blur, the first to enter the Qilin ring. Swoosh! Swoosh! Ning Yu, the golden-haired girl, and the little Qilin moved at the same time and entered the Qilin ring. Rumble! As soon as the 3 of them entered the Qilin ring, a terrifying pillar of light exploded from the planar barrier above the Qilin cave and slammed into it. Whoosh! The terrifying pillar of light almost caused the Qilin cave to collapse in an instant. Everything that came into contact with the pillar of light turned to dust. With the Qilin cave as the center, all the vegetation in the surroundings was uprooted. Moreover, the terrifying shockwave continued to spread. Chapter 17:07. Tremor. Whoosh! The terrifying shockwave from the dimensional barrier not only made Ning Yu and the human demon's scalps go numb, but even all the beasts in the Moling mountain range trembled from the depths of their hearts. Who was the strongest in the celestial spirit realm? Martial practitioners below the peak sky supreme level would probably think that sages were the strongest. But to those who had reached the peak sky supreme level or even surpassed it, the strongest being in a lower realm like the celestial spirit realm was not the sages, but the dimensional barrier. As long as you were in the celestial spirit realm, not to mention sages, even existences that surpass sages were not as strong as the dimensional barrier. Ning Yu and the human demon hid in the Qilin ring, but all the beasts in the Moling mountain range were not so lucky. The dimensional barrier had almost never failed to destroy something in a lower realm like the celestial spirit realm. So all the beasts in the Moling mountain range fled with all their might, wanting to leave the Moling mountain range before the shockwave spread. It was a good idea, but the result was exceptionally cruel. Oh, isn't the Moling mountain range a forbidden area? What kind of terrifying existence did we offend? Everyone, hurry up and run. If we're any later, we might all die here. Run? Run my ass. Such a terrifying shockwave, even a sage. The last beast in the air had not even finished speaking when it spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Its body had been split into 2 by the powerful shockwave. After the shockwave killed the demonic beast, it did not stop at all. Instead, it spread out in all directions at a terrifying speed. All sorts of shouts, angry voices, and uneasy voices rose and fell in the Moling mountain range. But these shouts did not last for long before they dissipated. Evidently, the terrifying shockwave from the dimensional barrier had left as quickly as it had come. When the dimensional barrier realized that it had killed Immo Chinya, it ceased all banners and disappeared. Although the dimensional barrier had disappeared, the entire upper echelons of the celestial spirit realm were still trembling. This situation lasted for a few hours before it returned to normal. Investigate. Investigate at all costs. The most furious person in the entire celestial spirit region was the current palace lord of Emperor God Palace. The current palace master of Emperor God Palace wasn't very old, but his face was extremely cold. The palace master of Emperor Divine Palace was called Di Xiao. He had just come out of an extremely mysterious cultivation place 3 days ago. Di Xiao's current cultivation was at the half-step saint realm. However, even in the Emperor Divine Palace, there were less than 5 people who knew Di Xiao's true cultivation. As for the fact that the Emperor Divine Palace had a sacred grade essence crystal mine in the Moling mountain range, as well as the existence of the one-armed man, a semi-sage realm old ancestor, almost none of the Emperor Divine Palace's warriors knew about this. Wait! Di Xiao abruptly stood up from his chair, gently pressed his right hand down, and said in a deep voice, "I'll go personally. While I'm not here, you only have one task, and that is to properly entertain the messengers of the demon spirit realm. Remember, do not neglect them." Whoosh! As his voice faded, Di Xiao tore open the void with both of his hands and went straight in. Buzz! Not long after Di Xiao disappeared, a slight fluctuation appeared in the void of the entire area. This fluctuation was very weak, obviously appearing from those who had a deep understanding of space. Obviously, the Emperor Divine Palace still had a group of experts who had a deep understanding of space. In a life-and-death battle between warriors of the same cultivation, the warrior who had a deeper understanding of space would have a much higher chance of winning. Only Di Xiao knew about the existence of this group of warriors, because all of these people were brought here by Di Xiao from his training site. Whoosh! At the same time, Moling Mountain Range, in the area where the Qilin Cave was located. To be precise, it should be above the ruins where the Qilin Cave was located. In a huge pit, a cold light suddenly rushed out from the bottom. The speed of the cold light was very fast. Almost in the blink of an eye, it rushed out of the hundreds of feet deep pit. Whoosh! Whoosh! Then, a few figures flew out from the cold light. These figures were none other than Ningyu, human demon, and the others. Whoosh! After coming out, Ningyu first looked around, then couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Although Ningyu's cultivation had not reached the peak of the Sky Supreme level, he knew about the existence of the plane barrier. To be able to survive the impact of the plane barrier, it had to be said that Ningyu and the others were probably the first people in the immortal spirit realm to survive. But no one wanted to be the first, because if they were not careful, they might be targeted by the plane barrier. As long as one was in the immortal spirit realm, even a sage would not want to be targeted by the plane barrier. Luckily, there is no problem with the Qilin ring. The little Qilin looked at the ring on the golden-haired little girl's finger and revealed a relieved expression. The Qilin ring was the most precious treasure of the Qilin clan. If it was destroyed by the little Qilin would definitely feel bad. Ningyu, the 4 Qilin fruits, and the Qilin tree. I'm handing them all to you. The little Qilin took a deep breath and turned around to look at Ningyu. I've said it before, as long as you're willing to help me break the formation, I'll give you a great fortune. Now, it's time to fulfill my promise. Hearing the little Qilin's words, human demon could still keep his cool, but Ningyu revealed an excited expression. Ningyu is now a peak 9th grader Supreme. If he could receive the little Qilin's blessing, then wouldn't it be a matter of time before he became a Sky Supreme? No matter how weak the little Qilin was, its cultivation was still at the initial stage of the Sage Realm. To receive the blessing of an initial stage Sage Qilin was the dream of many cultivators. Ignoring Ningyu's expectant expression, the little Qilin threw 4 drops of blood to Ningyu. Of these 4 drops of blood, 2 are the Qilin's heart blood, and 2 are the Qilin's innate blood. Divide the 2 drops of Qilin's heart blood into 4 portions and place them into the 4 Qilin fruits. After that, you can devour and refine the Qilin fruits. As for the 2 drops of Qilin's innate blood, unless it's absolutely necessary, I advise you not to use them. Every drop of Qilin's innate blood can save your life. After speaking, the little Qilin brought the golden-haired little girl into Ning Yu's Yuzuan pagoda. Gulp! The moment the little Qilin disappeared, Human Demon couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva. In fact, the Human Demon even pinched his own thigh. Only when a pained expression appeared on his face did Human Demon stop. Qilin's heart blood, Qilin's innate blood, and 4 Qilin fruits. This opportunity was truly irresistible to the Human Demon. Looking at Ningyu, the Human Demon couldn't help getting more excited. Ningyu was truly his lucky star. First, it was the 2 drops of true dragon's blood, and now it was the Qilin's innate blood. Chapter 17:08. Kill. The Human Demon was still heavily injured and had yet to recover from the aftereffects of using his trump card. This matter was originally the Human Demon's greatest concern. After all, the Human Demon still needed to find enough energy before the next energy seal broke. But now that he had the Qilin heart blood, and Qilin fruit, this matter would vanish in a thin air. Even a mature Qilin fruit or a drop of Qilin heart blood could restore the Human Demon to his peak state. Of course, due to the suppression of the energy seal, even if the Human Demon recovered to his peak state, his cultivation would only be equivalent to an early sage. His battle prowess would only be on par with a peak early sage. As for the Human Demon's trump card that allowed him to unleash the battle prowess of a perfect sage, he wouldn't be able to use it for the next 3 days. With the Qilin heart blood and Qilin life blood, the Human Demon didn't really care whether or not he could use his trump card. The Human Demon looked at Ningyu, then at the Qilin fruit and Qilin blood floating in the air. He clenched his teeth and said, Ningyu, I don't want the Qilin tree, but I want 1 Qilin fruit and a drop of Qilin life blood. The Human Demon paid close attention to Ningyu's expression as he said this. If Ningyu didn't agree, the Human Demon could reduce his demands at any time. After all, the Human Demon was heavily injured, and Ningyu still had the little Qilin and the terrifying golden-haired girl. The Human Demon didn't want to be enemies with Ningyu. Senior must be joking. These things are the little Qilin's gift to us. We should divide them equally. Ningyu smiled and flicked his wrist, tossing the 2 Qilin fruits, the Qilin tree, a drop of Qilin heart blood, and a drop of Qilin life blood to the Human Demon. Although Ningyu and the Human Demon were using each other. Back at the St. Grade crystal mine, without the Human Demon's help, Ningyu might have already been killed by the embroidered robed cultivators. Know how to repay kindness. If others are good to me, I'll be good to them. This was Ningyu's code of conduct. All right, since that's the case, I won't be unreasonable. After being with Ningyu for so long, Human Demon had already figured out Ningyu's personality. The Human Devil didn't exchange any more pleasantries with Ningyu. He accepted the 2 Qilin fruits, a drop of Qilin heart blood, and a drop of Qilin life blood. As for the Qilin tree, the Human Devil didn't want it. After all, in order to nurture a Qilin tree, one would need either a Qilin corpse or a world tree. Human Devils didn't have these 2 things, so the Qilin tree was useless to him. Although he knew that the Human Demon didn't want the Qilin tree, when a Human Demon returned the Qilin tree to him, Ningyu still felt a little excited. The Human Demons couldn't nurture the world tree, but he could. As long as Ning Lu dripped a few drops of his blood on the Qilin tree every once in a while, it would provide enough nourishment for the Qilin tree. After all, although the Qilin tree was precious, it paled in comparison to the world tree. Ning Lu isn't easy to fool. Thinking of that mischievous Ning Lu, Ningyu suddenly felt a headache coming on. If he wanted Ning Lu to willingly provide his blood, Ningyu would probably have to spend a lot of money first. In Ningyu's opinion, if he wanted to convince Ning Lu, he would need at least a Qilin fruit or a drop of true dragon blood. Forget it, we'll talk about it when the time comes. Ningyu shook his head, then put away the Qilin fruit and Qilin heart blood. Ningyu wasn't as crazy as the human demon. After taking the Qilin fruit, the human demon split a drop of Qilin heart blood into two and inserted one into the Qilin fruit. Following that, the human demon swallowed one of the Qilin fruits right in front of Ningyu. After swallowing the Qilin fruit, the human demon sat down cross-legged and began to use a technique to refine and absorb the energy. Although the energy pressure was temporarily gone, the human demon wasn't satisfied. He wanted to use the Qilin fruit to recover his strength to its peak, then make a trip to the Pill Creation Continent's Alchemy Union. The human demon's plan was very simple. He wanted to find a way to break the energy seal in his body while he was still in the immortal spirit realm. Only by breaking the energy seal in his body could the human demon have a chance to enter the higher realm he was originally from and find the person who had framed him. The human demon didn't tell Ningyu about this. He just kept it to himself. After all, from the human demon's point of view, even if Ningyu knew, he definitely wouldn't be able to help. After all, the person who framed him was an extremely terrifying existence, even in the higher realms. Ningyu was only an immortal spirit realm cultivator. Wasn't it asking him to make an enemy out of a higher realm cultivator? Ningyu didn't know what the human demon was thinking. After accepting the Qilin fruit, he sat cross-legged on the ground and began to use a technique to recuperate. Right now, Ningyu's plan was very simple. He would first adjust his mental state to its peak, then swallow the Qilin fruit and strive to break through to the Sky Supreme realm. Actually, Ningyu had considered one thing. This place had just been bombarded by the planar barrier. It was very likely that it would attract the attention of other factions and send experts over. But when Ningyu saw the human demon's extremely natural expression, he immediately dispelled his worries. Even the human demon wasn't worried. So what was there for him to worry about? He would deal with the situation as it came. Even if high-level experts came, the human demon would be there to hold them off. Even if the human demon couldn't hold them off, there was still the little Qilin in the Tower of the Ascension of You. As the saying went, even if the sky collapsed, there was still a tall person to watch over it. Ningyu's current state of mind was pretty much the same. However, Ningyu didn't completely pin his hopes on the human demon and the little Qilin. As he recuperated, he spread out his perception, paying close attention to the surroundings. If there was even the slightest sign of trouble, Ningyu would immediately inform the human demon. Recuperating was always boring. In order to adjust his mental state to its peak, Ningyu spent a full 2 hours. In these 2 hours, the human demon had already completely refined the Qilin fruit. After refining the Qilin fruit, the human demon was clearly more excited. A fully matured Qilin fruit could allow a sage-level cultivator to unconditionally ascend an entire level. Although the human demon was an existence that surpassed sages in the higher planes, and his body was suppressed by the energy seal, the benefits that a single Qilin fruit could bring to the human demon was still terrifying. The strength that the human demon could display now was equivalent to a mid-sage. Moreover, the human demon could feel that the energy seal in his body had weakened a little. The Qilin fruit could suppress the energy seal. The human demon almost jumped up in surprise when he heard this news. If the Qilin fruit could suppress the energy seal, then why not use the remaining Qilin fruit? Not good. The human demon's expression suddenly changed as he thought of this. Who's sneaking around? Hurry up and show yourself. The human demon roared as he looked into the distance. Wong. As the human demon roared, the space he was staring at began to tremble. Chapter 1709. Rage. If you dare to touch Ningyu, I'll definitely kill you. The human demon couldn't help cursing when he saw the figure charging towards Ningyu. At this moment, the human demon even regretted his actions. Right from the start, the human demon had already noticed a cultivator hiding in the surrounding space. Since the cultivator's aura was weak, the human demon didn't pay any attention to it. The reason why the human demon didn't pay any attention to it was because he thought that he could stop someone even if they suddenly attacked. But who could have imagined that the cultivator hiding in the void had reached the half-saint realm? In fact, the human demon still didn't put a half-saint realm cultivator in his eyes. After all, after devouring the Qilin fruit, the human demon's strength had reached the Middle Saint realm. If a Middle Saint realm cultivator wanted to deal with a half-Saint realm cultivator, it would be as easy as crushing an ant. But now, the human demon was extremely vexed to the extreme. The human demon had always thought that he was the half-Saint's target. Even if the half-Saint wanted to launch a sneak attack, he would be the target. Who would have thought that the half-Saint would change his target at the last moment and shift his target to Ningyu? Ningyu's cultivation was only at the pinnacle 9th grade Earth Sovereign Realm. He hadn't even reached the Heavenly Sovereign Realm. The outcome of a cultivator with such a cultivation against a half-Saint was practically predictable. I'll kill you, then slaughter my way to your sect and eradicate them all. In order to intimidate the half-Saint, the human demon unleashed his Middle Saint realm aura as he roared and frantically pressed towards the half-Saint. The human demon's plan was simple. He wanted to intimidate the half-Saint so that the half-Saint wouldn't dare to act recklessly against Ningyu. If he could only intimidate the half-Saint, then the human demon's goal would be achieved. As Di Xiao charged towards Ningyu, he was having an intense battle in his heart. On one hand, he knew that the human demon was a Middle Saint realm cultivator. If he made an enemy of the human demon, it would mean that he had made a terrifying enemy for the Emperor Palace. But on the other hand, he really wanted to kill Ningyu, because Di Xiao sensed Mu Yunshan and Ninghai's aura from Ningyu. For so many years, Di Xiao had been sending experts to search for Ninghai. Di Xiao had been brooding over Mu Yunshan breaking off the engagement. Di Xiao had a special characteristic. If he couldn't get his hands on something, he would definitely destroy it. Therefore, after Mu Yunshan rejected the marriage with him, he tried every possible way to take revenge. Although Mu Yunshan wasn't particularly favored in the Supreme Nine Purities Temple because of this incident, Di Xiao was still rather fearful of the Colossus that was the Supreme Nine Purities Temple. Di Xiao was afraid of the Supreme Nine Purities Temple, but it did not mean that he was afraid of Ninghai. Di Xiao had issued many orders. As long as they found Ninghai, they would be killed without mercy. Now that he sensed Mu Yunshan and Ninghai's aura from Ningyu, Di Xiao instantly concluded that Ningyu was the little bastard in his heart. Therefore, even at the risk of being targeted by the human demon, a middle-stage sage warrior, Di Xiao still resolutely attacked Ningyu. He wanted to kill Ningyu here and now. Kill! Di Xiao, who was in a state of madness, completely ignored the human demon's warning and pressure. He shouted in a low voice. Then, the blue veins on his right arm bulged, and he fiercely smashed towards Ningyu's head. Di Xiao's goal was very clear. He wanted to smash Ningyu's head with one punch. Only by killing Ningyu could Di Xiao relieve the hatred in his heart. After I kill you, I'll go find your father. Little bastard, you're lucky to die in my hands. Di Xiao's face was ferocious, as if success was right in front of him. Real dragon blood. At this critical moment, Ningyu's heart jumped, and he hurriedly swallowed the last drop of real dragon blood. Bang! Fortunately, Ningyu had experienced the tempering of 2 drops of real dragon blood, which allowed him to swallow and refine the blood at an extremely fast speed. Almost in an instant, the drop of real dragon blood was refined by Ningyu. Of course, it wasn't a complete refinement. At best, it was only half of it. But that 50% had allowed Ningyu's aura to rise from the pinnacle 9th grade Earth Sovereign Realm to the pinnacle Heavenly Sovereign Realm, just a step away from the Quasi-Saint Realm. Last time, Ningyu had swallowed 2 drops of real dragon blood, and his cultivation had risen from peak 5th grade Earth Supreme to peak Sky Supreme. This time, Ningyu had only swallowed 1 drop of real dragon blood, and his cultivation had risen to peak Sky Supreme. The reason was that Ningyu's physique had become much stronger after the tempering of 2 drops of real dragon blood. Moreover, he had also refined half of the real dragon blood. Inyang Palm. Ningyu didn't feel excited because of the increase in his aura. Instead, his face became extremely solemn. Swinging his right hand, the dark gold blood from his heart flowed through his entire body. Ningyu's fist brought along a violent yuan qi gale, and it collided with Di Xiao's fist. Crack! The 2 fists collided, and an extremely crisp sound rang out. Swish! Swish! Then, the two figures retreated at a terrifying speed. Ningyu retreated because his internal organs had been shaken by the huge force, and he had no choice but to retreat. As for Di Zhao's retreat, it was because of the human demon. The human demon had allowed Di Zhao to punch Ningyu once, and that was already a huge mistake. How could he allow Di Zhao to attack a second time? Di Zhao wasn't a fool. He had already thought of a way out. He could kill Ningyu with one move and then use his trump card to retreat. But now, it seemed that one of the two things in Di Zhao's mind was destined to fail. Di Zhao's move could only seriously injure Ningyu, but not kill Ningyu. As for the second thing in Di Zhao's mind, using his trump card to retreat, it seemed to be a little difficult. The human demon's powerful aura had already locked on to him and was constantly chasing him. Looking at the human demon's momentum, he would not stop until he caught up with him. Ningyu, just you wait. Di Zhao, will never let you go. Although it was a little difficult for him to escape, Di Zhao still didn't forget to threaten Ningyu. Di Zhao. Hearing Di Zhao's words, Ningyu slightly frowned and began to rummage through his memories. So it's him. In just a moment, Ningyu knew Di Zhao's identity. The current palace master of Divine Emperor Palace. Ningyu didn't know much about Di Zhao. He only knew that Di Zhao was the palace master of Divine Emperor Palace, had the cultivation of a half-step saint, and had gone to a mysterious place to cultivate for a period of time. However, Ningyu also knew the relationship between Di Zhao and his family. He had already thoroughly understood the situation of his parents. It was because of Di Zhao that he couldn't reunite with his parents. Crack, crack. Clenching his fists, Ningyu's face became extremely ugly. In the past, he didn't have the strength, and under the strong pressure of Divine Emperor Palace, he could only escape. But now, he had already established Supreme Palace. There were quite a few branch palaces inside, and there were quite a few powerful martial artists. Although the low-level strength couldn't compete with Divine Emperor Palace, the high-end combat power was enough to compete with Divine Emperor Palace. Chapter 1710. Project Launch, however. Even if Ningyu wanted to kill his way to the Emperor Divine Palace, he had to plan carefully. Supreme Palace had just been established not long ago. Ningyu did not want to destroy Supreme Palace's foundation in the first battle. Actually, Ningyu's original intention was to have Supreme Palace's first battle at the Jin family. After all, the Kim clan had been looking for trouble with him again and again. It was imperative to eradicate the Kim clan. Thinking of this, Ningyu fell into a dilemma. Whoosh! At this moment, the human devil turned into a blur and flew over from afar. You didn't catch up? When Ningyu saw the human demon, he was slightly stunned, feeling a little strange. Di Zhao was only a half-step saint, while the human devil could display the fighting strength of a middle-stage saint. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. There was no reason for the human demon to be unable to catch up to Di Zhao. But this kind of situation actually happened, which made Ningyu so surprised that his jaw almost dropped. Don't mention it. I don't know where that guy called Di Zhao found an advanced teleportation scroll, but he ran away faster than a dog. Ningyu's astonished expression made the human demon feel a little embarrassed. To be honest, Human Demon himself was very surprised that Di Zhao had the teleportation scroll. Although ordinary low-level instant movement scrolls could also teleport, the movement effect would definitely not be that crazy. After all, the teleportation scroll taken out by Emperor Shao was something that even Human Devil, a warrior at the middle stage of the Saint Realm, could not cut off from the space. Alright, you seem to know Di Zhao? Human Demon didn't want to talk too much about why he didn't get Di Zhao, so he quickly changed the topic to Di Zhao. To be precise, the Human Demon wanted to find Di Zhao through Ningyu. As long as he knew where Di Zhao's lair was, he could kill his way there and get rid of Di Zhao. The Human Devil didn't believe that Emperor Shao had that many high-grade teleportation scrolls. After all, teleportation scrolls were extremely precious items. Even in high-grade planes, they were considered luxuries. Moreover, the Human Demon could now display the battle prowess of a mid-stage saint. According to the human demon's estimation, as long as he refined the last Qilin fruit, his cultivation would definitely reach the peak of mid-stage saint. At that time, even if Di Shao had a backer, he would still be able to kill him without any scruples. Not really. Di Shao is the palace master of Emperor God Palace. Ningyu knew that the human devil was very angry, but he didn't tell him about the conflict between him and Di Shao. He simply introduced Di Shao to the human devil and told him everything he knew. He's just a palace master of Emperor Palace. How dare he kill you in front of me? He must be tired of living. The demonic human's temper flared, and he said angrily, "Let's part ways here. 1 month from now, we will meet at the Alchemy Union in the Dansheng mainland." With that, the human devil stomped his feet on the ground, wanting to leave. Senior, how could Ningyu not know what the human devil wanted to do? At this moment, even if Ningyu was a pig, he could guess the human devil's intentions. Kill his way to Emperor God Palace, and kill Di Shao with his own hands. In fact, there's a great hatred between me and Di Shao. After thinking about it, Ningyu felt that it was better to tell the human devil about his relationship with Di Shao. After all, in Ningyu's opinion, Di Shao had come for him this time, and it had nothing to do with the human devil. If the human devil and Di Shao became enemies with Emperor God Palace, because of him, he wouldn't be able to live with it. Next, Ningyu told the human devil everything about the hatred between him and Di Shao. Damn it! How can there be such a shameless person in the world? After listening to Ningyu's story, the human devil couldn't help but curse. When a human devil was in a high-level plane, he had been framed and his family was separated. Therefore, he hated people like Di Shao very much. Don't worry about this. Anyway, I'm going to kill my way to Emperor God Palace and take Di Shao's head. The human devil's expression was extremely angry, and his face looked a little ferocious. Senior, I know you're doing this for my own good, but I think this matter should be considered at length. Ningyu said, "There's no need for that. Let's go to Emperor God Palace now." The human devil's attitude was tough, and he didn't give Ningyu any chance to persuade him. Ningyu knew that since the human devil was determined to go to Emperor God Palace, he couldn't stop him. In this situation, he could only try to get rid of all obstacles. Ningyu was a little worried about killing his way to Emperor God Palace. First, Di Shao dared to attack him even after knowing that the human devil was a middle-stage Sage Realm warrior. This meant that he had a way to deal with the human devil's revenge. Second, which was also what Ningyu was most concerned about, a way out. Ningyu could simply kill his way to Emperor God Palace. But the result was that he was doomed. There was no way out. The way out that Ningyu was talking about was not himself, but Supreme Palace, Lu Wei, the Dark Emperor, Ning Lu, and the others. The Dark Emperor, Ning Lu, and the others were already tied to the same rope as Ningyu. They were bound together for good or ill. Ningyu didn't want to rashly kill his way to Emperor God Palace, only to be captured by Di Shao and then used to threaten the Dark Emperor and the others. The human devil didn't need to think about these things, but Ningyu had to. Since he had established a force, Ningyu had to consider more things. He wouldn't do anything that was 100% risky. After thinking about it, Ningyu said to the human devil, "Senior, I won't stop you from killing your way to Emperor God Palace, but I have a condition. Before your cultivation reaches the middle stage Sage Realm, it's better not to go there." "I promise you." Human Demon agreed to Ningyu's request without a second thought. In fact, the human devil even leaped into the huge pit and dove into it. He first set up a camouflage on the pit, then took out the second Qilin fruit and swallowed it. The camouflage was to avoid unnecessary trouble. Crack! As soon as the Qilin fruit entered his mouth, the human devil immediately used a spell to refine it. The human devil knew very well that the Qilin fruit had a suppressive effect on the energy seal in his body. The first Qilin fruit had restored his cultivation from the early stage Sage Realm to the middle stage Sage Realm. The human devil was very confident that after refining the second Qilin fruit, his cultivation would return to the middle stage Sage Realm. As for whether he could recover to the late stage Sage Realm, the human devil didn't have any expectations at all. After all, the human devil knew very well that as long as the energy seal in his body wasn't resolved, his cultivation wouldn't be able to recover to the late-stage sage realm. Fortunately, the human demon was very clear about this point, because he still had a trump card. Once he used it, he could instantly display the combat power of a sage in the great perfection. However, he couldn't use that trump card for the next 3 days, true dragon blood. While the human devil was refining the Qilin fruit, Ningyu also sat cross-legged beside the human devil and used the spirit transformation art to refine the remaining true dragon blood in his body. Although Ningyu had devoured and refined half of the true dragon blood, there was still half left in his body. Chapter 17:11. Bam! 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 Due to the experience of tempering his body with the true dragon's blood, Ningyu's speed of refining the true dragon's blood was not particularly slow. Ningyu circulated the spirit form art with all his might, while using his soul force and the bewitching lotus flame to help. Ningyu was well aware of his current situation. It wouldn't be long before the human demon completely refined the second Qilin fruit and recovered his strength to peak mid-stage sage realm. What Ningyu needed to do was refine the remaining true dragon blood in his body before the human demon completely refined the second Qilin fruit. Whoosh! With the help of the spirit form art, his soul force, and the bewitching lotus flame, Ningyu refined the true dragon blood in his body at a terrifying speed. Time passed quietly as Ningyu and the human demon cultivated. 3 hours passed in the blink of an eye. In these 3 hours, at least a dozen powerful cultivators had arrived above the pit Ningyu and the human demon were in. Without a doubt, the cultivators' goal was clear, to find out why the planar barrier had attacked. But the result was disappointing. They searched the pit for a long time, but they couldn't find Ningyu or the human demon. 3 hours passed undisturbed. Ningyu and the human demon's cultivation came to an end. Boom! At this time, a terrifying aura burst from Ningyu's body. Sky Supreme. The energy contained in half a drop of true dragon blood was terrifying to the extreme. Just by refining it, Ningyu's cultivation had surpassed the half-step Sky Supreme realm and reached the early-stage Sky Supreme realm. He really is a monster. The human demon couldn't help exclaiming when he sensed the aura coming from Ningyu. At the same time, the human demon probed Ningyu's body. As soon as he did, the expression on the human devil's face grew even more intense. His soul force has reached early-stage 9th rank. It was no wonder the human demon was surprised. In the higher planes, there were quite a few Sky Supremes at Ningyu's age. However, it was extremely rare to find a Sky Supreme with a soul force at the initial 9th grade. Ningyu was just a martial artist from a lower plane, yet he was able to accomplish this at such a young age. It was truly terrifying. Since you've almost recovered, let's set off for the Emperor Palace now. Although he was impressed by Ningyu's monstrous talent, Human Demon did not forget what he was going to do next. Kill his way to Emperor Divine Palace and kill Di Xiao with his own hands. Whoosh! Leaving these words, the human demon did not give Ningyu a chance to refute. He pushed off the ground and rushed toward the periphery of the Moling mountain range. Ningyu didn't think much of it and immediately followed. Ningyu knew that he couldn't interfere with human demon's decision. Moreover, he had successfully advanced to early-stage Sky Supreme and had the Qilin fruit and Qilin blood. Even if he encountered a peak Sky Supreme, he could fight head-on. In fact, if he used all his trump cards, he could even kill a pinnacle Sky Supreme. Di Xiao was a half-step saint. Even if there were other sages in the Emperor Palace, Human Demon should have no problem dealing with them with his current strength. Ningyu's task on this trip to the Emperor Palace might be relatively simple. Plunder. Plunder wantonly and empty the Emperor Palace as much as possible. Ningyu had a more thorough understanding of this matter, so he naturally wouldn't stop Human Demon. Ningyu was even a little excited about reaching the Emperor Palace as soon as possible. As for returning to Giant Shield City to meet up with the Dark Emperor and the others, Ningyu didn't think it was particularly important. It could wait until he returned from the Emperor Palace. Wait! Ningyu and Human Demon were very fast. They arrived at the periphery of the Moling mountain range almost in an instant. Since Ningyu had advanced to early-stage Sky Supreme, His flying speed was much faster. Moreover, Human Demon deliberately slowed down, so Ningyu didn't fall behind. However, as soon as they left the Moling mountain range, Human Demon suddenly stopped in midair and said in a deep voice, "Hurry up and come out. Someone's here?" Hearing Human Demon's words and the solemn expression on Human Demon's face, Ningyu's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. A cultivator that could make Human Demon so solemn must be a sage. If 8 or 10 sages appeared at this time, Human Demon would probably have a hard time worrying about him. Could it be that something bad had happened just after they left the Moling mountain range and had yet to reach the Emperor Palace? Swish! Swish! This time, Ningyu obviously thought too much. Not long after Human Demon's voice fell, the void in front of them trembled, and then 2 figures slowly appeared from the void. Middle-aged man, silk-robed cultivator? At first, Ningyu's heart was heavy, but when he saw the 2 figures in front of him, he couldn't help but be a little surprised. One was the master of the Moling mountain range, the silk-robed cultivator, and the other was the master of the fire Qilin insect king, the middle-aged man. Ever since the planar barrier had struck the Qilin cave, Ningyu had thought the 2 of them dead. Who would have thought they'd still be alive? Although the silk-robed cultivator and the middle-aged man weren't in a good state, describing them as struggling at death's door was already a compliment. However, the fact that they'd survived the planar barrier's attack was enough to prove their ability. One had to know that the reason Ningyu and Human Demon had survived was all because of the Qilin ring. Did the silk-robed cultivator and the middle-aged man also have a trump card similar to the Qilin ring? "Why aren't you dead?" Human Demon asked Ningyu's question. Human Demon's question was very direct. In the end, Human Demon even said coldly, "If you don't answer honestly, I don't mind loosening your muscles and bones." After the incident in the Qilin cave, Human Demon finally understood some things and also thought through some things. Needless to say, the middle-aged man had a grudge against him. The silk-robe cultivator didn't hesitate to use immortal crystals to keep him here, so there was definitely something fishy going on. Moreover, the silk-robe cultivator was related to the Passionless Valley, so Human Demon definitely wouldn't let him go. The 2 of us didn't hesitate to burn our essence blood and use all our trump cards to barely block the planar barrier. The silk-robe cultivator and the middle-aged man looked at each other and said in unison. The 2 of them didn't want to tell Human Demon the truth. First of all, they were from a higher plane, and they'd come to the immortal spirit region for a certain mission. Since they'd come from a higher plane, there had to be a way back. This time, they'd been able to block the planar barrier's attack because they'd both taken out their treasures to return to the higher plane and worked together to block the planar barrier's attack. The 2 of them had a plan in mind. Although the treasures they'd used to return to the higher plane had been broken into many pieces by the planar barrier, they still had some hope that one day they could repair the treasures and return to the higher plane. Because if they told Human Demon the truth, Human Demon would definitely take the broken treasures. Chapter 17:12. Chapter 17:12. Blood drop, secondly with hope would there be motivation. Therefore, the cultivator and the middle-aged man lied at the same time. Since you won't tell the truth, there's no need for you to stay. The Human Demon frowned slightly. His figure flashed. His right hand clenched into a fist and punched at the middle-aged man's heart. The Human Demon's punch contained the strength of a peak mid-stage sage. The middle-aged man and the cultivator could lie to Ningyu, but they couldn't fool the Human Demon. The Human Demon knew that the middle-aged man and the cultivator came from a higher plane. There were 2 ways to return to a higher plane from the immortal spirit realm. The first was to communicate with the plane barrier and try to break the seal. Since the birth of the celestial spirit realm, only a few heavens had been able to do this. The second way was to sneak in. The so-called smuggling, as the name suggested, was to use certain magic treasures, secret techniques, and other things that could deceive the planar barrier to cross the sea, to steal the beam and replace the pillar. The middle-aged man and the cultivator definitely didn't have the ability to do the first way. The second way was the key to their return to a higher plane. However, The human demon didn't know whether they would use magic treasures or secret arts to return to a higher plane. If it was magic treasures, the human demon could snatch them. If it was secret arts, he could force them to tell him. In any case, he couldn't let the middle-aged man and the cultivator leave today. I'll talk. Seeing that the human demon's fist was about to land on his chest, the middle-aged man hurriedly shouted, "We were able to block the attack of the plane barrier mainly because of these." As he spoke, the middle-aged man took out 2 stones. Although they were 2 stones, anyone with a discerning eye could see that they were originally 1, but had been split in half by some powerful external force. The 2 stones were each the size of a fist. The color of the stones was rather dim, giving off an extremely surreal feeling. There was even a drop of dark gold blood in the stone. Blood drop stone. This stone was called a blood drop stone. Every single blood drop stone contained a drop of dark golden blood. In the higher planes, some people said that the blood inside was the blood of a true dragon. Some said it was the blood of a Qilin, and some said it was the blood of an immortal. The human devil didn't really care what kind of blood was in the blood drop stone. What human demon cared about was the middle-aged man's identity. In a high-level plane, there was a sect that specialized in mining blood drop stones. That sect was named the Blood Drop Sect after the blood drop stone. The Blood Droplet Sect and the Heartless Valley were both powerful forces in the higher planes. Although the overall strength of these 2 sects was about the same, the Blood Droplet sect's way of doing things was more sinister, so the strength they displayed in the higher planes was more terrifying. "Are you from the Blood Drop sect?" The human demon suddenly stopped and stared at the blood drop stone in the middle-aged man's hand. He said in a low voice, "Answer me truthfully. I'm from the Blood Droplet sect. I've come to the immortal spirit realm on the orders of an elder of the sect to find a Qilin." Seeing the human demon's serious expression, the middle-aged man's confidence rose for no reason. The Blood Drop sect style of doing things was extremely ruthless. The middle-aged man believed that as long as a demonic human was a martial artist from a higher plane, he would definitely have heard of the Blood Drop sect. No one who offended the Blood Drop sect would have a good ending. "Very well, I originally wanted to spare your life, but since you've admitted that you're from the Blood Drop sect, I can only send you to the next world." The human demon clenched his fists and started moving again. This time, the human demon didn't give the middle-aged man any chance. A fist brought with it a violent yuan qi gale as it ruthlessly smashed into the middle-aged man's heart. Chi. The human demon's fist directly pierced through the middle-aged man's heart. Because the human demon could now display the strength of a mid-stage sage, and the middle-aged man's strength had greatly decreased, the middle-aged man was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. After killing the middle-aged man, the human demon didn't forget to kill the middle-aged man's primordial spirit. The primordial spirit was a powerful martial artist's second life. Even if the physical body was destroyed, as long as the primordial spirit existed, it could be used to possess another martial artist. Now that the middle-aged man's primordial spirit was destroyed, it meant that he was dead. Crack! The moment the middle-aged man died. In a room of the Blood Drop sect in a higher plane, there were originally 2 martial artists in the room. One was a slightly older elder, and the other was a younger youth. At this moment, the slightly older elder suddenly stood up and slammed his fist on the table in front of him, shattering it. "I'm so angry." The slightly older elder clenched his fists tightly, and the veins on his face bulged. He was furious to the extreme. "Elder Mu, what's going on?" The younger youth asked with a frown. "Things might be a little troublesome. The martial artist who helped me to the celestial spirit realm was killed." Although the elder was angry, his attitude towards the youth was rather respectful. After all, the youth was the most advantageous contender for the position of the next sect master in the Blood Drop sect. "You mean that there's no way to find the Qilin flesh?" Hearing the elder's words, the youth's face instantly turned cold. The Qilin flesh was the crux of the youth's cultivation for the next few years. With the Qilin flesh, the youth could use some secret technique to forcefully raise his cultivation by a level. As long as his cultivation could increase by a level, the youth had a high chance of fighting for the position of the Blood Drop sect's sect master. The elder was one of the people that the youth trusted the most in the blood drop sect, and he had entrusted the task of finding the Chelan flesh to the elder. Who would have thought that the elder would mess up the task? How could the youth not be angry? Although he was angry, the youth did not fly into a rage. After all, the elder's cultivation was not low, and he was a capable helper in the fight for the position of the sect master. He did not want to lose this powerful helper before he could become the sect master. Leave this matter to me. I will definitely bring the Chelan flesh to the blood drop sect within the stipulated time, the elder called Elder Mu said solemnly. I know the martial artist you sent to the celestial spirit realm. His strength is enough to do as he pleases in the celestial spirit realm. Even he failed, I'm afraid. The youth shook his head lightly and did not continue his sentence. There were some things that the youth would not finish, and he would let his subordinates speculate on their own. I understand. I will personally make a trip to the celestial spirit realm and use one of my primordial spirits. How could Elder Mu not know what the youth meant? Originally, Elder Mu had wanted to send another martial artist to the celestial spirit realm so that he could cultivate properly and strive to improve further. Now, it seemed like he had to use one of his primordial spirits to head to the celestial spirit realm. It was for no other reason than to find the Chelan flesh and successfully bring it back to the blood drop sect. Chapter 17:13. Chapter 17:13. Blood intertwining. The human demon didn't know what had happened in the blood drop sect. But even if he knew, he wouldn't pay too much attention to it. This was the immortal spirit realm, and there was a plain barrier here. Even if the blood drop sect sent experts over, their cultivation would be greatly suppressed. As long as the blood drop sect didn't send experts that surpassed the sage realm, the human demon wasn't afraid. You should have a blood drop stone on you. Hand it over. After casually killing the middle-aged man, the human demon turned to stare at the cultivator in embroidered clothes. You only have one chance. I hope you can grasp it. As he spoke, the human demon unleashed his powerful aura, suppressing the cultivator in embroidered robes. The reason why the human demon treated the embroidered robed cultivator this way was not because he wanted to kill him, but because he wanted to scavenge the information he needed from him. The cultivator in embroidered clothes was from the Heartless Valley. Normally, a core disciple of a large sect like this would have a seal left behind by an expert of the sect. If someone tried to devour the memories of a core disciple, the seal would explode. Large sects all had many secrets. When it came to guarding against secrets, large sects were especially cunning. They wouldn't leave any flaws for their competitors. Here, I'll give it to you. Under the pressure of the human demon's powerful aura, the cultivator didn't even last a second. He hurriedly took out a blood drop stone and threw it to the human demon. Ha! The human demon stretched out his right hand and firmly caught the blood drop stone thrown by the brocade-robed man. The human demon frowned slightly after catching the blood drop stone. The blood drop stone thrown by the cultivator was slightly different from the one the middle-aged man took out. The middle-aged man's blood drop stone had already been broken in half by the plane barrier. As for the cultivator's blood drop stone, there was only a small crack in the middle. I want to ask you a few questions. I hope you can answer me honestly. The human demon casually threw the blood drop stone to Ningyu and said to the cultivator, I will definitely answer as long as you promise not to kill me. The cultivator nodded hurriedly, afraid that the human demon would suddenly attack him. The scene of the demonic human killing the middle-aged man still lingered in the mind of the embroidered-clothed cultivator. Back in the Chelan cave, the brocade-clothed cultivator learned that the middle-aged man was an expert from the blood drop sect. The blood droplet sect strength was about the same as the Heartless Valley's. The human demon didn't even frown when he killed the people from the blood droplet sect. From this, it could be seen that if he offended the human demon wouldn't show mercy. In order to survive, the embroidered-clothed martial artist decided to say everything he knew. Go! The human demon grabbed the brocade-robed cultivator's shoulder, and his figure flashed as he flew into the distance. From the human demon's point of view, the matter between him and the Passionless Valley was a personal grudge. It wasn't appropriate for Ningyu to get involved. Moreover, the human demon did not want Ningyu to offend the Heartless Valley before he even entered the high-level plane. Ningyu could more or less guess what human demon was thinking. Since human demon didn't want Ningyu to know, Ningyu wouldn't be stupid enough to ask. The blood droplet stone is a good item. Ningyu retracted his consciousness and looked at the blood droplet stone in his hand. In his previous life, Ningyu was an alchemist who was infinitely close to becoming a pill sovereign, so he had some understanding of the blood droplet stone. However, Ningyu didn't know much about the blood droplet stone. He only knew that it was very precious and could be used as the main ingredient to refine a certain kind of pill. As for what kind of pill it was, even Ningyu in his previous life didn't know. Let me see what's so special about you. Ningyu's mind moved, and he used his powerful perception to carefully approach the blood droplet stone, wanting to enter it. At first, when Ningyu's perception approached the blood droplet stone, there were no changes. However, when Ningyu's perception entered the blood droplet stone and touched the drop of dark gold blood, the blood droplet stone finally changed. Crack! The blood droplet stone, which was already cracked, suddenly broke into two halves. The drop of dark golden blood inside suddenly fell to the ground. At this critical moment, Ningyu hurriedly swung his hand, wanting to throw the blood droplet stone away. However, under such circumstances, Ningyu was clearly half a beat slower. The dark gold blood in the blood droplet stone flowed along Ningyu's palm and frantically entered his body. Get out! Ningyu knew that he had gone overboard this time. He hurriedly transferred all the soul power in his body to his arm, wanting to force the dark gold blood out of his arm. Chi! 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 When the dark gold blood and Ningyu's soul power came into contact, a sizzling sound was heard. A portion of the dark gold blood was forced out of his body by Ningyu's soul power. The other portion of the dark gold blood broke through Ningyu's soul power defense and continued drilling towards Ningyu's heart. Demonic lotus flame. Ningyu's expression turned extremely grave. Since his soul power could not resist the dark gold blood's corrosion, he directly mobilized the demonic lotus flame, hoping to stop the dark gold blood's advancement. The demonic lotus flame was a very terrifying flame. Its core temperature was ridiculously high. Under the encirclement of the demonic lotus flame, another portion of the dark gold blood was forced out of his body. Although dark golden blood was constantly being forced out of the ground, there was still a small amount of dark golden blood that successfully reached Ningyu's heart. God of War blood. Ningyu realized the severity of the problem. He took a deep breath and immediately unleashed the God of War body to the extreme. Ningyu had the God of War body, and his heart had already produced the God of War body's blood. Coincidentally, the God of War body's blood was also dark gold. Swoosh! A stream of dark gold blood swept out from Ningyu's heart. In the blink of an eye, it arrived beside the dark gold blood and the blood droplet stone. What happened next made Ningyu's mouth slightly open in disbelief. The dark gold blood in the blood droplet stone was instantly devoured as soon as it came into contact with the God of War body's blood. Nothing was left. Buzz! After the dark gold blood in the blood droplet stone was devoured, Ningyu clearly felt that his God of War body had matured a little more. Previously, the reason why Ningyu did not use the God of War body when fighting others was because he felt that the God of War body had reached a bottleneck. Even if he used it, it would not be of much help to him. The strength of the God of War body was closely related to the dark gold blood that was produced at the heart. If only one drop of dark gold blood was produced, then the power of the God of War body would not be particularly strong. If he could produce 2 drops of dark gold blood, or even dozens of drops, then the power of the God of War body would be displayed. For a long period of time, the dark gold blood produced by Ningyu's heart was maintained at around 5 drops. Ningyu didn't deliberately cultivate, nor did he deliberately think of ways to increase his dark golden blood. But now, Ningyu's expression changed for the first time. Chapter 17:14. Thud, thud, thud. The dark golden blood in the blood drop stone could aid in the birth of the war god body's blood. Ningyu had to pay attention to this matter. Swoosh! Ningyu forced a drop of dark golden blood out of his body and inserted it into the remaining blood drop stone. TSK, TSK. As expected, what happened next verified Ningyu's guess. The blood in the blood drop stone could indeed aid in the birth of the war god body's blood. Could it be the war god body's blood as well? Ningyu's brows furrowed as he started to ponder about the blood drop stone. If the dark golden blood in the blood drop stone was the war god body's blood, then things would be a little scary. Each blood drop stone contained a drop of dark golden blood. In fact, the blood drop sect even had a huge stockpile of blood drop stones. With so many blood drop stones, how many war god bodies would they have to kill? Just the thought of it made one's hair stand on end. Looks like I have to ask the human demon about the blood drop sect. Ningyu made up his mind. When the human demon returned, he would definitely ask about the blood drop sect. Ningyu is not a savior. If the blood drop sect really killed other war god bodies, he would not rashly make an enemy out of them. The only thing that Ningyu was worried about was that the blood drop sect would find out about his identity as a war god body and harm him. Of course, it was a little early for Ningyu to think about these things. After all, Ningyu had not charged out of the cage of the immortal spirit realm yet. Although it was a little early to think about these things, it was always good to prepare for a rainy day. Some things had to be thought about in advance and think a way to deal with them. Otherwise, when things came to him, he would often be flustered and at a loss on what to do. Ningyu did not want to do that, so it was imperative to understand the blood drop sect. In the following period of time, Ningyu focused on devouring and refining the dark golden blood that he had just obtained. After more than 10 minutes of refining and devouring, Ningyu discovered that the dark golden blood in his heart had increased from 5 to 6 drops. Although it was just one more drop of dark golden blood, this extra drop of blood increased Ningyu's strength by a lot. I'll use this time to practice the netherworld samsara palm. Ningyu looked into the distance and realized that the human devil had no intention of returning. He immediately decided to cultivate the netherworld samsara palm. As for the netherworld samsara palm, Ningyu had already cultivated it to the 10th palm, the yin-yang palm. The 11th palm strike was called the palm of creation, and it was extremely powerful. According to Ningyu's estimation, with his current state, it wouldn't be long before he could successfully cultivate the palm of creation. Whoosh! Before Ningyu could start cultivating the palm of fortune, a figure flew over from afar. Human demon. The human demon's figure flickered, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared beside Ningyu. Since the human demon was here, Ningyu naturally gave up on cultivating the palm of fortune. Ningyu knew very well that with the human demon's personality, he would definitely go to the Emperor Divine Palace. It wasn't the right time to cultivate the palm of fortune at this time. After returning, the human demon was in no hurry to leave. Instead, he looked at the shattered blood drop stones and asked doubtfully, "Where did the blood in these 2 blood drop stones go?" "I devoured them." Ningyu didn't hide anything from the human demon and answered truthfully. "What?" Hearing Ningyu's words, the human demon's mouth opened wide in shock, and his entire body froze on the spot. The human demon's exaggerated expression made Ningyu feel even more incredulous. Could it be that the human demon didn't know that the blood in the blood drop stones was the blood of the war god physique? In truth, Ningyu was right. The human demon didn't know what kind of blood was in the blood drop stones. In the higher planes, many people had studied the blood drop stones, and even martial artists who had surpassed the sage realm had done so. Without exception, all the martial artists who had studied the blood drop stones had failed. Besides the absolute upper echelons of the blood drop sect, no one knew what kind of blood was in the blood drop stones. A portion of them had tried to devour the blood drop stone's blood, and there was no lack of sage realm martial artists among them. However, those sage realm martial artists who had devoured the blood had all suffered a backlash. Now, Ningyu said that he had devoured the blood drop stone's blood and was still standing on the spot as if nothing had happened. How could the human demon not be shocked? "Are you sure you've devoured and refined the blood drop stone's blood?" The human demon still didn't quite believe it. He asked again to confirm it. "That's right." Ningyu nodded, expressing that he absolutely wouldn't lie to the human demon. Why can you devour the blood drop stone's blood? Why can you? The human demon seemed to be in a daze as he muttered incessantly. The reason why the human demon had such a reaction was because he had a friend who had also devoured the blood drop stone's blood in a higher plane. At that time, his friend had suffered heavy injuries. Helpless, he could only devour the blood drop stone's blood and pray for a miracle. Unfortunately, the miracle didn't happen. His friend had almost died. Although his friend didn't die, his current situation was no different from death. He could only rely on a large number of treasures to sustain his life every day. I got it. Suddenly, the human demon seemed to grasp something. He slapped his thigh and unleashed his powerful perception, directly entering Ningyu's body. Ningyu didn't know why the human demon had such a reaction, but he could only pray that the human demon didn't do anything out of line. 6 drops of war divine body blood, and one of them was only born recently. With the human demon's powerful perception, he could naturally easily discover the situation in Ningyu's body. This shocking discovery resolved all the doubts in the human demon's heart. The blood in the blood drop stones should be war divine body blood without a doubt. The human demon took a deep breath, his expression turning even graver. There were countless blood drop stones in the blood drop sect. No wonder so many war divine bodies would disappear for no reason in the higher planes. Now that he thought about it, those missing war divine bodies must have been captured by the blood drop sect and used to make blood drop stones. Senior, I want to know more about the blood drop sect. At this time, Ningyu asked cautiously. The power of the blood drop sect is not something you can imagine. With your current strength, it's better not to ask about it. The human demon looked at Ningyu meaningfully, then said, "What we need to do now is to kill our way to the Emperor Palace as soon as possible, then seize all the resources there so that I can recover to the late stage of the Sage Realm." After knowing that the blood drop stones contained war divine body blood, the human demon's mind became active. He wanted to recover to the late stage of the Sage Realm as soon as possible, then use the Chilinatal blood to reach the Great Perfection Sage Realm. At that time, he could think of a way to return to the higher plane. In the Immortal Spirit Realm, the density of Yuan Qi and the resources could not satisfy his cultivation needs. Only by returning to the higher plane as soon as possible could he completely solve the problem of the energy seal in his body. Since Di Xiao had the cultivation of a half-step sage, it meant that there must be other sages in the Emperor Palace. At this moment, the human demon's heart even began to waver. He wanted the ability that he had sealed. Chapter 17:15. Chapter 17:15. Divine Emperor Swish. The human devil did things swiftly and decisively, leaving as soon as he said so. A moment ago, he was still warning Ningyu not to investigate the blood drop sect. But the next moment, his figure flickered and he flew away. Since the human demon had left, there was no need for Ningyu to stay. His figure flickered and he followed closely behind the human demon. The middle-aged man from the blood drop sect and the cultivator from the unrequited Love Valley were just a small interlude. After the interlude, Ningyu and the human demon moved at full speed to reach the Emperor Palace as soon as possible. Ever since he successfully reached the Heavenly Supreme Realm, Ningyu wasn't particularly resistant to attacking the Emperor Palace. Since the human demon had dealt with the saints, his task was to deal with the remaining heavenly sovereigns. With Ningyu's current fighting strength, it wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with pinnacle heavenly sovereigns. From the Moling Mountain Range to the Emperor Palace, Ningyu and the human demon would arrive in 2 to 3 hours if they moved at full speed. However, Ningyu and the human demon had to stop after moving at full speed for an hour. The Emperor Palace was one of the most powerful forces in the Sky Demon region, so its defense was naturally the best. To reach the main gate of the Emperor Palace, they had to pass through several checkpoints. The first checkpoint was the Emperor's City. As the largest city under the Emperor Palace, the Emperor's City was twice the size of the Giant Shield City and the 100-Flower City. Moreover, the defensive array of the Emperor's City was also several times more terrifying than the peerless killing array of the Giant Shield City. The reason why Ning Yu and the human demon stopped wasn't because they encountered danger, but because they had reached the main gate of the Emperor's city. I'll help you hide your aura, and we'll try to sneak into the Emperor's city. The human demon's expression was extremely grave. Even though his strength had recovered to the middle phase Saint realm, he was still extremely cautious. Although the defensive array of the Emperor's city wasn't activated and there were only Earth sovereigns guarding the city gate, the human demon was still extremely cautious. What the human demon was concerned about wasn't the number of martial artists guarding the gate of Emperor's city. He was concerned about two things. The first one was the city defense array of Emperor's city. To be honest, once the grand array of Emperor's city was activated, even human fiends wouldn't be able to get out in a short time. Secondly, the human demon sensed the energy of a few saints in Emperor's city. It was obvious that there were more than one sage in Emperor's city. As for the saints in Emperor's city, he had no idea whether they were early stage or mid-stage saints. Human Demon really wanted to get to Emperor Divine Palace as soon as possible, but it was not Human Demon style to act rashly before figuring out how strong the enemy was. The Human Demon's thinking was simple. He would sneak into Emperor's city first, then find a way to find out the cultivation level of the saints hidden in Emperor's city. Once they figured out the situation of Emperor's city, the human demon would be the first to act. Stop right there. Ning Yu and the human demon changed their appearances slightly and walked side by side. But as soon as they arrived at the city gate, they were stopped by a 5th grader Supreme Guard. The guard didn't ask Ning Yu and the human demon for spirit crystals. Instead, he took out a palm-sized crystal and circled around Ning Yu and the human demon in a clockwise direction. The 5th grade Earth Supreme held the crystal and circled around Ning Yu and the human demon, but the crystal didn't change at all. Let's go in. The 5th grade Earth Supreme put away the crystal and waved his hand, indicating that Ning Yu and the human demon could enter Emperor's city. Since they could enter Emperor's city, Ning Yu and the human demon wouldn't risk their lives again. The two of them entered Emperor's city unhurriedly. Don't miss it. If you don't buy today, buy tomorrow. High-quality rhinoceros skin for only 1 spirit crystal. You won't be able to find it again if you miss this opportunity. The latest elixir was made by Master Tong himself. I'm sure you'll come again after you buy it. As soon as Ning Yu and the human demon entered Emperor's city, they heard people peddling their wares. The peddling seemed to have attracted the interest of Ning Yu and the human demon. They looked left and right and haggled with the stall owner from time to time. They were very busy. The reason why Ning Yu and the human demon were in such a state was because several powerful auras locked onto them as soon as they entered Emperor's city. According to the information that the demonic human had sent to Ning Yu, the weakest amongst them was a pinnacle heavenly sovereign, and there were even a few in the Saint realm. Thanks to Ning Yu's experience of 2 lives, he was able to withstand the pressure. Otherwise, he wouldn't have faced such a situation with a normal mind. Fortunately, the auras only stayed on Ning Yu and the human demon for a few seconds before they moved to others. Although the auras were no longer locked onto them, Ning Yu was still calm. Half an hour passed in the blink of an eye. In this half an hour, Ning Yu and human demon casually bought a few things. Where are we going now? Ning Yu asked the human demon after wandering on the street for half an hour. Let's go to a restaurant. That's the best place to gather information, the human demon said. Since ancient times, restaurants had always been a place where crooks mixed with the honest folks. In the restaurant, it was possible to meet otherworldly experts, direct descendants of large clans, and also people from the streets. The human demon had his own considerations when he chose to go to a restaurant. Before entering Emperor's city, the human demon already knew that there were several sage auras in the city. Coincidentally, one of the auras of a sage came from the huge restaurant in front of Ning Yu and the human devil. The Emperor Restaurant. In Emperor's city, the Emperor Restaurant was a business of the Emperor Palace, and it had the highest standard of hospitality in Emperor's city. No matter who it was, the requirement to enter the Emperor Restaurant was 100 sacred grade origin crystals. Although 100 sacred grade origin crystals wasn't a lot for real experts, it was still difficult for cultivators below the Sky Supreme level to come up with such a sum. Wait! An early sky supreme guard stopped Ningyu and the human demon in front of the Emperor restaurant. The guard extended his right hand and said, 200 sacred grade origin crystals. Swish! Ningyu behaved generously and threw an interspatial pouch to the guard. There were 500 sacred grade origin crystals in it. The rest are yours. Throwing out the interspatial pouch, Ningyu waved his hand at the guard. Bring us to the best room in the Emperor restaurant. Yes. The guard immediately showed respect to Ningyu when he saw the number of origin crystals in the interspatial pouch. In the guard's view, Ningyu was the young master of a major clan, so he came to the Emperor restaurant just to show off. Chapter 17:16. Oppressive aura. The early stage Heavenly Supreme Guard's idea was exactly what Ningyu and the human demon wanted. The master-servant relationship between Ningyu and the human demon was well thought out. Now that they had arrived at Emperor City, there were many sages and there was a city-protecting array. Under this premise, it was harder than ascending to heaven to reach the Emperor Divine Palace. Therefore, Ningyu and the human demon decided to start from another angle. They wanted to pretend to be a young master or a guard of a big family and spend lavishly in the Emperor restaurant to show that they didn't lack money. That was the only way to attract the attention of the senior officials of Emperor City and secretly control them. Then, they would find a way to figure out the truth about Emperor City and the Emperor Palace. To be honest, the extra 300 Saint Great Essence crystals made Ningyu feel a little pained. Now, Ningyu had less than 1,000 Saint Great Essence crystals with him, and these essence crystals were secretly hidden by Ningyu. The more he spent, the less he had. But the 300 Saint Great Essence crystals were indeed worth it. The early stage Heavenly Supreme Guard took Ningyu and the human demon to the 4th room on the 3rd floor of the Emperor restaurant. The rooms in the Emperor restaurant were divided into 3 sections: Heaven, Earth, and Human. There were 2 Heaven stage rooms in total. There were 4 Earth stage rooms in total. As for the people rooms, there were more of them, a total of 16 of them. What the hell is going on? Ningyu stared at the words on the door in front of him, and his face became extremely gloomy. He said in a deep voice, I asked you to take me to the best room in the Emperor restaurant. Is the number 4 Earth room the best room? Ningyu's behavior was extremely arrogant. Ningyu even stared at the early stage Heavenly Supreme Guard as if he was going to attack. Seeing Ningyu's attitude towards him, the early stage Heavenly Supreme Guard's expression didn't look too good. No matter what, he was an early stage Heavenly Supreme, while the kid in front of him was only a 1st grade Earth Supreme. Under the human demon's concealment, Ningyu only revealed his cultivation as a 1st grade Earth Sovereign. Therefore, the early stage Heavenly Sovereign Guards assumed that Ningyu was a 1st grade Earth Sovereign. If a grade 1 Earth Sovereign roared at a Heavenly Supreme, wouldn't it be disastrous? It was fine for him to lose face, but he couldn't lose face for the Emperor restaurant. Otherwise, the higher-ups of the Emperor restaurant would skin him alive. Some time ago, several warriors caused trouble in front of the Emperor restaurant. Although the guards in front of the Emperor restaurant stopped the troublemakers in time, the guards were still severely punished after the incident. The reason for this was that the guards did not kill the troublemaker directly. When Ningyu spoke to the early stage Heavenly Supreme Guard in such a tone, the guard even wanted to kill Ningyu. Because he was afraid of the human demon, the early stage Heavenly Supreme did not make a move directly. Instead, he said coldly, the rooms in front are already reserved. The best room is Earth Room 4. Call your boss here. Ningyu said angrily, I must have Sky Room 1 today. You can't afford to delay my important business. The early stage Heavenly Supreme was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He pointed at Ningyu with his right hand and was about to roar a few words, but he stopped abruptly. Then, the early stage Heavenly Supreme's attitude became extremely respectful. He said to Ningyu, Please follow me. I'll take you to Sky Room 1 now. As he spoke, the Sky Supreme made an inviting gesture with his hand. That's more like it. Ningyu walked toward the 4th floor with his head held high and chest puffed out. The human demon and early stage heavenly supreme followed closely behind Ningyu. Gentlemen, this is as far as I can take you. Sky Room 1 is just ahead. Please go ahead. At the entrance of the 4th floor of the Emperor Restaurant, an early stage heavenly supreme stopped and respectfully pointed to the front. It's none of your business. Hurry up and scram. Ningyu waved his hand impatiently. Without even turning his head back, he quickly headed for the number 1 Sky VIP room. Your acting is quite good. The human demon was a little dazed as he followed behind Ningyu. Ningyu's acting was indeed exaggerated, but this kind of exaggerated performance was very much like the arrogant young masters of big families. In order to attract the attention of the Emperor Restaurant's upper echelons, he had to act like this so naturally that no one would be able to see through him. It didn't take long for Ningyu and the human demon to arrive in front of Sky Room 1. This time, Ningyu restrained his arrogance a little and asked, "Who's inside?" The reason why Ningyu acted like this wasn't because Ningyu didn't want to be arrogant, but because he could be arrogant, but he couldn't be an idiot. There were 2 martial artists in the Sky Series private room. At this moment, both of them released their auras. One was an old man in his 60s or 70s, and his aura had reached early stage saint. The other was 2 to 3 years older than Ningyu, and his aura had reached the pinnacle heavenly supreme. The reason why Ningyu restrained his arrogance was because he was afraid of the early stage saint in the room. In the face of an early stage saint's warning, Ningyu would be an idiot if he deliberately acted arrogant. Swish! Facing the pressure of an early stage saint, the human demon took half a step forward and stood side by side with Ningyu. An aura that wasn't any weaker than an early stage saint emanated from the human demon, which easily resisted the pressure from Sky Room 1. As for the pressure of a pinnacle heavenly supreme, the human demon did not resist it, but left it to Ningyu. Go! The pressure of a pinnacle heavenly supreme couldn't affect Ningyu at all. The corner of Ningyu's lips rose as he gently waved his right hand before him, and a powerful aura emanated from his body. Sizzle! Sizzle! The 2 auras clashed. Clearly, Ningyu's aura had gained the upper hand. Creak! When Ningyu's aura gained the upper hand, the door of Sky Room 1 slowly opened. Come in. Shortly after, a faint voice resounded from the room. Ningyu didn't show the slightest fear and strode into the number 1 heavenly box. As soon as he entered Sky Room 1, Ningyu felt a gaze staring at him without the slightest fear. There was no need to think about it. The person who stared at Ningyu without the slightest scruple was the Peak Sky Supreme, who was 2 to 3 years older than Ningyu. Since someone was staring at him, Ningyu naturally had to respond. A first-grade Earth Supreme, the Pinnacle Sky Supreme looked at Ningyu. Although he looked calm on the surface, he was actually extremely shocked. In his view, Ningyu was only a first-grade Earth Supreme. With a cultivation of first-grade Earth Sovereign, he was actually able to withstand the pressure of his aura. Furthermore, he even faintly gained the upper hand. This made things awkward. Chapter 17:17. Semi-compromise, I don't believe it. Zhang Kejun's expression became extremely ugly. No matter what, it wouldn't be good for him if a first-grade Earth Sovereign easily withstood the pressure of a pinnacle heavenly sovereign. He would get back at them the way he lost his face. This was what Zhang Kejun was thinking. Zhang Kejun was a practical person. Whatever he thought, he would act accordingly. Buzz. In the next instant, a terrifying aura burst forth from Zhang Kejun's body, pressing down on Ningyu once again. In order to gain the upper hand, Zhang Kejun even used some hidden methods. The oppressive aura of a half-step saint. Zhang Kejun had reached the pinnacle heavenly supreme realm at such a young age, so he naturally had a lot of trump cards on him. A pinnacle heavenly sovereign can actually use the aura of a quasi-saint. Looks like he's in the upper echelons of the Emperor Palace. Ningyu's expression didn't change in the slightest when he felt the oppressive aura coming towards him. In fact, Ningyu was very satisfied, extremely satisfied. At the very least, the angrier this pinnacle heavenly sovereign was, the more advantageous it would be for him in the negotiation. As for the pressure of the half-step saint, Ningyu didn't care about it at all. Ningyu had just been tempered by 2 drops of true dragon blood not long ago, and he also had Qilin blood and Qilin lifeblood. Although Ningyu couldn't deal with a half-sage expert for the time being, Ningyu didn't fear the pressure of a half-sage expert's aura. Ningyu's calm performance made the corners of Zhang Kejuan's mouth involuntarily rise. In Zhang Kejuan's opinion, the reason why a first-grade Earth Supreme like Ningyu dared to be so arrogant was definitely because of the guard beside him. Since you want the guards to help you resist the pressure of the imposing aura, fine, I will cut off this thought of yours. With a thought, Zhang Kejuan winked at the old man beside him. His meaning was self-evident. Rumble. Di Tianming was well aware of Zhang Kejuan's action. Di Tianming gently stepped forward with his right foot, and an extremely terrifying aura rippled out from his body. Di Tianming was at the early stage of the Saint Realm. The aura he was emitting now was very obvious. Di Tianming was putting on a show for the human demons. The two of us shouldn't blindly get involved in a fight between juniors. Let them settle it themselves. To be honest, before Ningyu reached the heavenly sovereign realm, if Ningyu faced such a provocation, he would definitely retaliate without any hesitation. However, Ningyu had reached the heavenly sovereign realm. Human Demon was very confident in Ningyu's current strength. Ningyu's potential was something that even the demonic humans did not have a rough understanding of. However, the Human Demon believed that Ningyu wouldn't feel any pressure against a Peak Sky Supreme. Ningyu stood his ground. Facing Zhang Kejuan's oppressive aura, he did not make any move. Arrogant. Zhang Kejuan's evaluation of Ningyu was that he was arrogant, conceited, and ignorant. Zhang Kejuan had to admit that Ningyu was strong, but that was all. He was not ridiculously strong. He might be able to resist the aura of a Peak Sky Supreme, but what about a half-sage? It was harder than ascending to the heavens for a Grade 1 Earth Supreme to resist the aura of a half-sage. But what happened next left Zhang Kejuan completely dumbfounded. He had used his trump card to display the aura of a half-sage, but it had no effect on Ningyu. In other words, it was easier for Ningyu to resist the aura of a half-sage than it was for him to resist the aura of a Peak Sky Supreme. This made things even more awkward. Zhang Kejuan felt like he had been greatly insulted. At this point, Zhang Kejuan was certain that Ningyu was an old monster that had lived for many years. The only reason he had displayed a cultivation of a Grade 1 Earth Supreme was to act like a pig to eat a tiger. What's your cultivation? Zhang Kejuan stared at Ningyu and said coldly. And how old are you? Zhang Kejuan was now focused on 2 things. First, what was Ningyu's cultivation? Zhang Kejuan really wanted to know. Second, how old was Ningyu? If Ningyu was a dozen years older than him, or even a few decades older, Zhang Kejuan would definitely feel a little better in his heart. However, if Ningyu was as he looked, a few years younger than him, Zhang Kejuan would probably collapse. What's wrong? You're not as skilled as me, so you're trying to find out about my background? Ningyu raised his eyebrows and stared at Zhang Kejuan with interest. I heard you, ahem. At this time, Ningyu cleared his throat to make himself look pretentious. When Ningyu cleared his throat, not only did Zhang Kejuan look at him, but even Di Tianming couldn't help looking at him. Why should I report to you what I do in my life? Ningyu raised the corner of his mouth and looked at Zhang Kejuan with disdain. He said proudly, You're a Peak Heaven Supreme, but you're so weak. You're a disgrace to Emperor Palace. You. Ningyu's words made Zhang Kejuan lose his temper. This was going too far. This was really going too far. Zhang Kejuan took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. What Ningyu said was a disgrace to Emperor Palace, and it had nothing to do with him. He didn't need to fall out with Ningyu because of Emperor Palace. After all, he wasn't from Emperor Palace. Zhang Kejuan's calmness made Ningyu look at him in a new light. He was mocking Emperor Palace, but Di Tianming could still be so calm. This showed that he wasn't simple. Ningyu's arrogance was based on Human Demon's powerful strength. In the first round of fight between Human Demon and Di Tianming, it was obvious that Human Demon had the absolute advantage. According to Ningyu's guess, Zhang Qijuan hadn't fallen out with him completely, so the fight between human demon and Di Tianming must have played a decisive role. Haha, let me introduce myself first. At this time, perhaps to help Zhang Qijuan out, Di Tianming smiled and said, I'm Di Tianming, and he's Zhang Qijuan. We're from the demon spirit realm. Boom! Di Tianming's words set off a storm in Ningyu's heart. No wonder Zhang Qijuan didn't fall out with him when he heard him mocking Emperor Palace. At first, Ningyu thought it was because of the fight between human demon and Zhang Qijuan. Now it seemed that Zhang Qijuan wasn't from Emperor Palace had a certain effect. Demon spirit realm? Ningyu raised his eyebrows and said impatiently, I don't care if you're from the demon spirit realm or the celestial spirit realm. Anyway, I'm taking the heavenly number 1 box. Chapter 17-18. Settling the score. Ningyu could see it clearly. When he finished speaking, Zhang Qijuan and Di Tianming's expressions clearly changed. Zhang Qijuan and Di Tianming were both at the demon spirit realm, and they were also very strong. Someone who could make their expressions change was definitely not ordinary. First of all, that person had to be at least a sage. Secondly, that person's status in Divine Emperor Palace should be terrifyingly high. Russell. Not long after, a middle-aged man appeared in Ningyu's vision. The middle-aged man's gaze fell on the human demon as soon as he entered the first skybox. He completely ignored Ningyu. The middle-aged man had been watching the entire battle between the human demon and Di Tianming from the void. Through observation, the middle-aged man gave the human demon a rough estimate. His cultivation was around the peak of early stage sage. His exact strength wasn't clear, but he was at least at the peak of early stage sage, possibly even at mid-stage sage. After all, Di Tianming's true battle prowess was at the peak of early stage sage, and Di Tianming was at a disadvantage against the human demon. Therefore, the human demon's strength was infinitely close to mid-stage sage. I heard that you want to stay in the first skybox and want to chase away my most distinguished guest. The middle-aged man retracted his thoughts and said to the human demon, I'll give you 2 choices. 1. Get out of here as soon as possible. 2. Apologize to Di Tianming and young Master Zhang. Zhang Qijuan immediately, before the human demon could speak, Ningyu crossed his arms and looked at the middle-aged man with interest. I think the 3rd choice is more suitable for us. Ningyu's sudden interjection made the middle-aged man's face turn a little dark. The middle-aged man was a wily old fox, so he naturally noticed the relationship between Ningyu and the human demon. If he had to choose between Ningyu and the human demon, the middle-aged man would definitely choose the human demon. There was no other reason. One was an early-stage Sky Supreme, while the other was close to mid-stage Sage. If it was anyone else, they would have chosen the human devil. His words are my words, the human demon said indifferently. At this time, the human demon said, from now on, every word he says represents my meaning. The meaning of a human demon's words was clear. Being disrespectful to Ningyu is being disrespectful to me. The middle-aged man's expression turned ugly. The middle-aged man had chosen to appear at this time to suppress the human demon with Di Tianming. It would be best if the human demon could reveal the purpose of their visit. But from the looks of it now, it might be a little tricky. Let's attack together and probe him. Just as the middle-aged man was feeling a little troubled, Di Tianming's words suddenly rang out in his mind. Hearing this, the middle-aged man immediately became enlightened. Both he and Di Tianming were at the peak of the early-stage sage realm. If the two of them joined hands to probe the human demon, they should be able to find out the truth about the human demon. However, the middle-aged man was still a little uncertain. Before he made his move, he asked Di Tianming to contact all the demon spirit state sages in Emperor City. In order to reach a deep cooperation agreement with the Emperor Divine Palace, Di Tianming had brought the war immortals from the other big families in the demon spirit realm to express his sincerity. Only in the devil spirit realm could a sage obtain the title of sage. For example, the war god of the Clan and Qian Hao. Each of the 9 big families in the devil spirit realm had more than one war god. How arrogant! After secretly thinking of a countermeasure, the middle-aged man and Di Tianming shouted at the same time and quickly rushed toward the human demon. The two martial artists at the peak of the early stage of the Sage Realm joined hands to attack the human demon. For a moment, Zhang Kejuan was a little dumbfounded. To be honest, Zhang Kejuan did not expect this result. In Zhang Kejuan's opinion, it was really unwise for the middle-aged man to make an enemy of the human demon at this time, as the absolute senior of the Emperor Divine Palace. In any case, the human demon was a martial artist at the Sage Realm, so he must have a huge force behind him. Making an enemy out of the human demon at this time was definitely bad news for the cooperation between the Devil Spirit Realm and the Emperor Divine Palace. As the youngest genius of the Zhang clan in the Devil Spirit Realm, Zhang Kejuan had already been secretly selected as the next war god. As long as he could successfully cooperate with the Emperor Divine Palace, Zhang Kejuan would be able to get the best resources of the Zhang clan and successfully reach the Sage Realm. Therefore, Zhang Kejuan did not want to offend the human demon and the force behind Ningyu. However, in Zhang Kejuan's heart, he hoped that Di Tianming and the middle-aged man could defeat the human demon, or even capture the human demon alive. In that case, he could attack Ningyu unscrupulously and let Ningyu have a taste of his true strength. Zhang Kejuan had a kind of almost blind confidence in himself. He believed that the reason Ningyu could withstand the pressure of his aura was largely because of the magic treasures he had on him. It had little to do with his own strength. Zhang Kejuan really wanted to spar with Ningyu and defeat the arrogant guy. Ningyu, fair and square. Rumble. Di Tianming and the middle-aged man used their full strength right from the start. Di Tianming and the middle-aged man did not dare to be careless when dealing with a martial artist who was suspected to be at the mid-stage of the Sage Realm. Even though they used their full strength, the two of them still secretly warned the sages and even the half-sages around them. Once the human demon displayed his terrifying strength, the sages and half-sages hiding in the surroundings would attack unconditionally. The human demon had long sensed that there were sages and half-sages hiding in the surroundings, so he had been hiding his cultivation of the mid-stage of the Sage Realm and deliberately revealed his cultivation of the peak of the early stage of the Sage Realm. On one hand, the human demon did not want to reveal his strength so early. On the other hand, the human demon wanted to capture all the sages in one fell swoop. However, the second idea only lingered in the human demon's mind for a second before it was thrown to the back of his mind. Even though the human demon had the battle strength of the peak of the mid-stage of the Sage Realm, it would still be very difficult to capture all the sages in one fell swoop. If there was a fish that escaped the net and they contacted the Emperor Divine Palace and the experts of the Demon Spirit Realm, it would be self-defeating. Therefore, the human demon decided to deal with Di Tianming and the middle-aged man first, and let Ningyu and Zhang Kejuan exchange blows. If Ningyu could find a way to control Zhang Kejuan, it would be very helpful for their next operation. Fight outside. With this thought in mind, the human demon shouted in a low voice. Immediately, his figure flashed, and he rushed out of the #1 skybox. Behind the human demon, Di Tianming and the middle-aged man looked at each other. Then their figures flashed, and they disappeared behind the human demon. As for the sages and half-sages hiding in the void, they did not hesitate and followed Di Tianming and the middle-aged man with all their might. From a moment the human demon and Di Tianming fought to the moment they left, only a few minutes had passed. Zhang Kejuan did not know how to react for a moment and was a little stunned. Ha ha! But soon, Zhang Kejuan laughed loudly and the corners of his mouth curled up. He stared at Ningyu and said sinisterly. Chapter 1719. Chapter 1719. Chapter 1719. To be evenly matched, Zhang Kejuan was confident that he could defeat Ningyu. Therefore, after the human demon and Di Tianming left, Zhang Kejuan bared his fangs. Although killing Ningyu might be a little unrealistic, Zhang Kejuan was still very confident that he could defeat Ningyu and make Ningyu kneel down and kowtow a few times. In your opinion, how should we settle this debt? In response to Zhang Kejuan's arrogant words, Ningyu did not take any drastic actions. Ningyu's indifferent performance was a little unexpected for Zhang Kejuan. From Zhang Kejuan's point of view, Ningyu was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. As long as there were no guards by his side, he could easily defeat Ningyu. But now, Zhang Kejuan's heart wavered a little. Since Ningyu had such strong confidence, it meant that he had some ability. Kneel down and count out to me a few times, then release your mind and let me control you completely. Zhang Kejuan looked at Ningyu and said coldly, "Only then will I consider letting you live." Not a bad idea, I agree. Ningyu muttered to himself for a moment before nodding his head. You agree just like that? Zhang Kejuan couldn't believe his ears. Kneeling down and kowtowing to someone else was something that anyone would consider very carefully. Moreover, not only did Ningyu have to kowtow to him, but he also had to open up his mind and let him control it. Under this premise, Ningyu could still agree without hesitation, which indeed made Zhang Kejuan look at him in new light. What else can I do? You've already made such a huge sacrifice, so I'll definitely fulfill your wish. Spreading his hands out, Ningyu helplessly replied, "Truth be told, I don't want to spend so much effort to control a pinnacle heavenly sovereign, since I feel that a pinnacle heavenly sovereign isn't useful to me." The first half of Ningyu's sentence was fine, and Zhang Kejuan was very satisfied. He was just short of praising Ningyu for being sensible. However, the second half of Ningyu's words made Zhang Kejuan so angry that his nose became crooked. In the end, Ningyu had misinterpreted his intentions. He actually thought that he was going to kneel down and kowtow to him, and that he was going to open his mind and let him control it. This was intolerable. Zhang Kejuan was instantly enraged. Without saying a word, he immediately moved and charged at Ningyu at an extremely terrifying speed. At this moment, Zhang Kejuan's thoughts were very simple. He wanted to injure Ningyu and let Ningyu know how powerful he was. In the face of Zhang Kejuan, who was constantly rushing towards him, Ningyu's expression became extremely solemn. Although Ningyu believed that his strength was comparable to a pinnacle heavenly sovereign, and that he could even kill a pinnacle heavenly sovereign, Zhang Kejuan was no ordinary pinnacle heavenly sovereign. A pinnacle heavenly sovereign in his 20s should have combat strength infinitely close to that of a half-saint. In other words, Zhang Kejuan's true combat strength couldn't be estimated using pinnacle heavenly sovereigns. Yin-yang palm. With a low roar, Ningyu clenched his right hand into a fist and punched out. The yin-yang palm was the 10th palm of the netherworld samsara palm. Moreover, when Ningyu used the yin-yang palm of the Earth Supreme Realm, its power was incomparable to when he used the yin-yang palm at the Sky Supreme Realm. The difference was at least dozens of times greater. Ningyu's intentions were very clear with his first move. He wanted to test Zhang Kejuan's true combat strength. Child's play. Zhang Kejuan immediately revealed a disdainful expression when he saw that Ningyu actually wanted to exchange blows with him. The reason why Zhang Kejuan had such an expression was because he had used 100% of his strength in his first punch. As a quasi-war god of the Zhang family, one of the 9 great families of the demonic spirit realm, Zhang Kejuan was very clear about not holding back against an enemy. Since he wanted to defeat Ningyu, he should beat Ningyu to the ground right from the start. He couldn't give Ningyu any chance to counterattack. What I want is for you to underestimate me. Ningyu saw Zhang Kejuan's facial expression. With a thought, Ningyu secretly attached the demonic lotus flame to his fist. Even Zhang Kejuan had used 100% of his strength, so Ningyu naturally wouldn't hold back. Not only would he not hold back, but Ningyu would also use his full strength. Ningyu didn't even think about using flames like the Myriad Beast Flame and the Myriad Bone Flame, which were ranked around the 30s of the Mystic Flames ranking. To deal with Zhang Kejuan, he must use the demonic lotus flame. In the first exchange, Zhang Kejuan and Ningyu both wanted to have the absolute upper hand and defeat the other with one move. Therefore, in the first exchange, Ningyu and Zhang Kejuan used their full strength. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 figures dashed quickly in the number 1 skybox. Swoosh! Swoosh! Their fists rubbed against the air, emitting a sizzling sound. Bang! In an instant, Ningyu and Zhang Kejuan's fists collided. When the two fists collided, an extremely clear sound rang out. Then, the two figures quickly retreating to the edge of the room before stopping. It was obvious. In the first exchange of blows, Ningyu and Zhang Kejuan were evenly matched. They were equally matched. He's actually so powerful. Zhang Kejuan was surprised that his first move couldn't do anything to Ningyu. One should know that in order to have the absolute upper hand in the first exchange, Zhang Kejuan had used 100% of his strength. If he couldn't defeat Ningyu with 100% of his strength, he would at least have to use his trump card to defeat Ningyu. In fact, in Zhang Kejuan's heart, he was very reluctant to use his trump card. This time, Zhang Kejuan had a very important task on his shoulders when he went to the Emperor Palace. After all, if he wanted to gain the upper hand in the negotiation with the Emperor Palace, he had to give the Emperor Palace a surprise. Zhang Kejuan's idea for this surprise was relatively simple. He wanted to challenge the current palace master of the Emperor Palace and give the Emperor Palace a show of strength. Zhang Kejuan knew very well that the palace master of the Emperor Palace was only 20 years older than him. If he challenged the palace master of the Emperor Palace and defeated him, he could, to a great extent, reduce the spirit of the Emperor Palace. Although that was the case, Zhang Kejuan felt that he had been insulted by Ningyu, so he immediately decided to use some of his trump cards to teach Ningyu a lesson. Today you have wings. After thinking through everything, Zhang Kejuan clenched his fists and stared fiercely at Ningyu. However, before Zhang Kejuan could finish his words, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face became extremely pale. Demonic Lotus Flame. When he was exchanging blows with Zhang Kejuan just now, Ningyu quietly inserted the demonic Lotus Flame into Zhang Kejuan's fist and let it lie dormant in Zhang Kejuan's fist. At the critical moment, when Zhang Kejuan decided to counterattack, Ningyu began to use the demonic Lotus Flame in Zhang Kejuan's fist. The demonic Lotus Flame was ranked in the top 5 on the mysterious flame list, and its power was extremely terrifying. Under its attack, Zhang Kejuan spat out a mouthful of blood. His face turned bloodless and extremely pale. Get out! However, Zhang Kejuan was a peak heaven supreme martial artist and a peerless genius of the Zhang family in the demonic spirit realm. He quickly reacted. Chapter 1720. Absolute Crushing. From a moment he decided to go against Zhang Kejuan, Ningyu had prepared for 2 scenarios. The first preparation was to use the process of punching with Zhang Kejuan to inject the demonic Lotus Flame into Zhang Kejuan's fist, and then mobilize the demonic Lotus Flame to further nibble away at Zhang Kejuan's arm. His second preparation was to continue attacking and beat the enemy while they were down. Black Dragon Sword. Ningyu was a practical person. He was prepared to do both. With a flick of his wrist, Ningyu took out the Black Dragon Sword and waved it repeatedly, displaying the 10th move of the Emperor God technique, cutting the heavens. Among all of Ningyu's techniques, the strongest was none other than Heaven Slashing. Although the Yin-Yang Palm was powerful, it was built on the premise that it was perfectly compatible with the demonic Lotus Flame. Severing the heavens was different. As long as he activated the Black Dragon Sword, he would be able to use the move Cutting the Heavens. Voila! As Ningyu shouted in a low voice, several sword lights separated from the Black Dragon Sword and rushed towards Zhang Kejuan. I can't believe it. Seeing several sword lights rushing towards him, Zhang Kejuan's heart instantly turned cold. Zhang Kejuan was wholeheartedly dealing with the demonic Lotus Flame in his fist. How could he be in the mood to fight against Ningyu? Through this period of understanding, Zhang Kejuan could almost conclude that the flame in his fist was extremely terrifying. At the very least, it was ranked in the top 10 of the bizarre flame list. Zhang Kejuan was not a fool. It would be very difficult to escape in a short period of time after being entangled by these flames. This is infuriating. Zhang Kejuan's lungs were about to explode. He had the will, but not the strength. If it was before, Zhang Kejuan could still use his trump card to deal with Ningyu. But now, he didn't even have a way to use his trump card. The demonic lotus flame was like a parasite. Once it stuck into his body, it would be very difficult to get rid of it. Zhang Kajuan had very few choices in front of him. They could either cut off one of their arms or be killed by Ningyu's attack. Zhang Kajuan knew that he had to make a choice. It was impossible for him to survive and keep his arm. I will settle this score sooner or later. Zhang Kajuan gritted his teeth and decided to abandon his right arm first before using his trump card to fight against Ningyu. As for the grudge of losing his arm, Zhang Kajuan wanted to blame it on Ningyu. You're quite bold. Zhang Kajuan's action of raising his left arm made Ningyu feel slightly disappointed. Ningyu's heart was as clear as a mirror. He knew very well what Zhang Kajuan meant when he raised his left arm. He had to cut off his right arm and abandon his right arm. Since Zhang Kajuan did this, it meant that Zhang Kajuan had revived this certain death situation. Something's wrong. Suddenly, Ningyu seemed to have discovered something terrifying and hurriedly retreated. Rumble. Ningyu had only retreated a few steps when the space where he had been standing suddenly exploded. A figure appeared in the blasted void. A saint. Sensing the terrifying aura emanating from this figure, Ningyu's face turned extremely ugly. Ningyu had never expected that a saint would appear at such a crucial moment. It was no exaggeration to say that this saint's aura concealment technique was too brilliant. It was one thing for Ningyu not to discover his existence, but even the demonic human who had left not long ago did not discover him. The demonic human had recovered to the peak of mid-stage saint, but even he could not discover the martial artist in front of him. This was enough to show how terrifying this martial artist's concealment technique was. Whoosh! After this saint appeared, the first thing he did was not to kill Ningyu, but to casually disperse the sword ray that Ningyu had slashed out. Although Ningyu was an early-stage Sky Supreme, and his sky-severing sword ray was extremely powerful, it was still lacking in front of Saint. After casually dispersing the sword ray that Ningyu had slashed out, this saint easily forced out the demonic lotus flame in Zhang Kajuan's right hand. Uncle Chang, this time I really have to thank. The saint's sudden appearance made Zhang Kajuan overjoyed. The saint called Uncle Chang waved his hand, interrupting Zhang Kajuan's words. He said indifferently, "You don't have to thank me. This is my duty. You are the Zhang family's quasi-war god, the most advantageous contender for the next family head. The family head has instructed me to ensure your safety." After saying this, Uncle Chang turned his head to look at Ningyu. Then, his figure gradually became illusory and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Zhang Kajuan's sudden appearance and disappearance made Zhang Kajuan's expression very ugly. Zhang Kajuan was a very arrogant person. It was originally a game between him and Ningyu, but in the end, he still had to ask Zhang Chang for help. At this moment, Zhang Kajuan had the idea of killing Ningyu, regardless of everything, regardless of the demonic human, regardless of the power behind Ningyu. Zhang Kajuan wanted to kill Ningyu and ruthlessly trample on Ningyu. Kid, I admit that you are very strong. However, in front of me, you are destined to regret being born into this world. The moment the idea of killing Ningyu appeared, it lingered in Zhang Kajuan's mind. Zhang Kajuan stared fiercely at Ningyu and said coldly, "I gave you a chance. As long as you knelt down and kowtowed to me a few times, then let go of your mind and let me control you, I will spare your life." Speaking up to this point, Zhang Kajuan paused for a moment before continuing. "The opportunity was placed in front of you, but you did not know how to cherish it. You can't blame me for this." After saying this, Zhang Kajuan's hands waved continuously. He had decided to use his trump card, Buzz. However, Zhang Kajuan was destined to have a tragic ending. His trump card had only been used halfway when he hurriedly stopped. There was no other reason. It was because Zhang Kajuan noticed that the void in the number 1 private room had begun to tremble. 3 figures rapidly flew out of the void. The demonic human, the middle-aged man, and Di Tianming. These 3 martial artists were the 3 martial artists who had gone out to fight not long ago. Moreover, judging from their current state, Zhang Kajuan was almost certain that Di Tianming and the middle-aged man had not gained any advantage. This was because Di Tianming and the middle-aged man's expressions were extremely ugly. Extremely ugly. Seeing this, Zhang Kajuan hurriedly stopped using his trump card. Unable to use his trump card, Zhang Kajuan's heart was bleeding. One had to know that once Zhang Kajuan used his trump card, it was very difficult to stop it. If he wanted to stop using his trump card, there was only one way, and that was to use another trump card to stop it. In other words, the appearance of Di Tianming and the demonic human had caused Zhang Kajuan to lose 2 trump cards. 2 trump cards that could save his life. Due to the sudden return of the demonic human and Di Tianming, the atmosphere in the number 1 private room became a little gloomy. Fortunately, this gloomy atmosphere did not last long before it was broken by the middle-aged man. Cough, cough. The middle-aged man first coughed twice, attracting the attention of the demonic human and Ningyu. He then said in a clear voice, "I, Sun Deshun, represent Emperor Divine Palace to welcome the 2 of you." The words of the middle-aged man, who was also Sun Deshun, made Zhang Kajuan a little dumbfounded. Didn't he go with Di Tianming to test the demonic human strength? Why did this happen? Chapter 1721. Chapter 1721. A large number of sages Zhang Kajuan felt worse than if he had eaten *T. Ningyu was about to be defeated by him. Who would have thought that the guard next to Ningyu would suddenly return? The guard's return was secondary. What mattered was Sun Deshun's attitude towards the guard. This attitude made Zhang Kajuan feel a little uneasy. Feeling uneasy, Zhang Kajuan used a secret skill unique to the Zhang family and started to communicate with Di Tianming. What's going on? Why does Sun Deshun treat that warrior like this? Zhang Kajuan went straight to the point, not beating around the bush in the slightest, and asked directly. The human demon is very powerful. Sun Deshun and I are no match for him, even if we work together. Di Tianming's face also darkened at the mention of the human demon. Di Tianming's expression turned even more unsightly when he recalled the fight with the human demon just now. It was extremely unsightly. After leaving the first sky box, he and Sun Deshun hurriedly chased after the human demon. They wanted to probe the human demon's strength. At the same time, all the sages in Emperor City took action to cheer for them. But Di Tianming had ignored the human demon's speed from the beginning. After leaving the first sky room, Di Tianming and Sun Deshun couldn't catch up with the human demon no matter how fast they sped up. This situation lasted until they were far away from the sages behind them. The human demon stopped. Although the human demon's behavior was a little abnormal, Di Tianming and Sun Deshun still decided to go all out to test the human demon. The result surprised Di Tianming and Sun Deshun. The human demon only threw 2 punches, and Di Tianming and Sun Deshun were defeated. Di Tianming was fine. He only fell back a few feet, but he didn't fall or spit blood. Sun Deshun's situation was much worse than Di Tianming's. Not only did he fall to the ground, but he also spit blood and looked pale. One move. The human demon's one move made Di Tianming and Sun Deshun realize how terrifying his strength was. Di Tianming and Sun Deshun thought that even if the human demon hadn't reached the mid-stage sage, he was infinitely close to it. Di Tianming and Sun Deshun did not dare to be careless when facing a human demon who was at the intermediate stage of the sage realm, or was infinitely close to it. Thus, Di Tianming and Sun Deshun immediately compromised and decided to introduce the human demon to the Arch Palace. Even you and Sun Deshun together weren't a match for that human demon. Zhang Kajuan's eyes widened, and his jaw almost dropped. Zhang Kajuan was well aware of Di Tianming and Sun Deshun's strength. In Zhang Kajuan's opinion, if Di Tianming and Sun Deshun joined forces, no sage primary stage expert would be a match for them. Now that Di Tianming had personally admitted that the human demon was very powerful, didn't that mean that the human demon's cultivation had reached the middle stage of the sage realm? Thinking of this, Zhang Kajuan was even more surprised. As the number one genius of the Zhang family in the demon spirit realm and a quasi-war god, Zhang Kejuan knew what the intermediate stage of the sage realm meant. Sage intermediate stage martial artists represented the peak of the demon spirit realm and immortal spirit realm. If the human demon was really a warrior at the middle stage of the sage realm, wouldn't their trip to the Emperor Divine Palace end in failure? Not only would he fail the mission, but it was also unknown whether he would be able to keep his life. Can we activate the defensive formation of the Emperor's city to deal with him? Zhang Kejuan rolled his eyes and proposed a feasible plan. Although Zhang Kejuan wasn't from the Emperor Divine Palace, he still had some understanding of the defensive formation of the Emperor's city. Once the defensive formation was activated, it would be difficult for the human demon to leave the Emperor's city, even if he was really a middle-stage sage. The key to activating the defensive formation lies with Sun Deshan. Ever since we returned to the Emperor's city, I have been reminding him to activate the defensive formation, but he has been indifferent. It would have been fine if Zhang Kejuan hadn't mentioned the defensive formation, but the moment he mentioned it, Di Tianming was furious. In order to make Sun Deshan activate the defensive formation, Di Tianming had racked his brains. In the end, it wasn't satisfactory. Sun Deshan was like a deaf person, and he didn't respond at all. This situation made Di Tianming want to throw a few punches at Sun Deshan and ask him what was going through his mind. Lead the way. Let's go to the Emperor Divine Palace now. Just as Di Tianming and Zhang Kejuan were secretly communicating, the human demon's voice was heard in the number one sky room. Yes, I will take you there now. Sun Deshan's reaction once again refreshed Di Tianming and Zhang Kejuan's understanding. If it wasn't for the human demon's mild anger, Sun Deshan would have nodded and bowed. However, even if he didn't nod and bow, Sun Deshan's attitude towards the human demon was extremely respectful. As soon as the human demon's voice was heard, Sun Deshan was the first to act and rushed out of the number one sky room. Behind Sun Deshan, Ning Yu and the human demon left the number one sky room side by side and disappeared in the blink of an eye. What should we do? Di Tianming looked at the empty room and asked. Although Di Tianming's cultivation was higher than Zhang Kejuan's status in the Zhang clan was much higher than Di Tianming's. The reason why Di Tianming followed Zhang Kejuan this time was to let the Emperor Divine Palace see the Zhang clan's strength and also to ensure Zhang Kejuan's safety. One was in the light, while the other was in the dark. The Zhang clan attached great importance to Zhang Kejuan's safety. To the Emperor Divine Palace, Zhang Kejuan clenched his fists, and an extremely vicious, murderous look appeared in his eyes. Zhang Kejuan was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He had lost face to Ning Yu and the human demon, so he had to get back at them. Zhang Kejuan already had a general idea of how to get back at them. However, the premise of everything was based on the situation where they didn't get left behind by Ning Yu and the human demon. Therefore, in order to keep up with Ning Yu and the human demon, Zhang Kejuan tore the void with both hands and immediately went in. Since Zhang Kejuan had already taken action, Di Tianming naturally wouldn't delay. However, before leaving, Di Tianming didn't forget to inform the Zhang clan sages around him. Di Tianming asked the sages to stay in the Emperor's city and wait for his and Zhang Kejuan's return. Whoosh! Sun Deshan was from the Emperor Divine Palace. With him leading the way, Ning Yu and the human demon didn't have to worry about running into trouble at the later stages. After all, Sun Deshan had the cultivation of an early-stage sage. In the Emperor Divine Palace, the cultivation of an early-stage sage was enough to rank at the top. Along the way, Ning Yu was very puzzled. Ning Yu's doubts were about Sun Deshan. From the human demon, Ning Yu learned that Sun Deshan's cultivation was at the peak of the early-stage sage, and he was already under control. Ning Yu didn't care how the human demon controlled Sun Deshan. What Ning Yu cared about was why a large number of Sage Realm warriors suddenly appeared in the Emperor Divine Palace. After all, the Emperor Divine Palace had spent so much manpower and resources to mine the sacred-grade primordial crystal mine in the Moling Mountains in order for the one-armed warrior to smoothly advance to the early-stage sage. At that time, Ningyu was almost certain that even if there were sages in the Emperor Divine Palace, there wouldn't be too many. At most, there would be one. Chapter 1722. Chapter 1722. Chapter 1722, Courting Death. Ning, you did not know why a large number of sages had suddenly appeared in Divine Emperor Palace, but Ningyu knew that something must have happened to Divine Emperor Palace. As for what had happened to the Emperor Divine Palace, he would have to go there to find out. Ningyu glanced at Sun Deshan, who was rushing ahead, then at the human demon beside him, and then at Di Tianming and Zhang Kajuan behind him. Ningyu couldn't help but feel worried. The human demon's true cultivation was at the peak of mid-stage sage realm, and his battle prowess was also at this level. To be honest, Ningyu did not feel safe with the cultivation of a peak mid-stage human demon saint. It's better to prepare early. With a thought, Ningyu contacted the little Qilin in the Tower of Yuzuan. Ningyu was very confident in little Qilin's strength. Even though little Qilin only had the cultivation of an early-stage sage, Ningyu felt that it could fight against an early-stage sage. Ningyu contacted little Qilin for a full 10 minutes before little Qilin gave Ningyu a reply. I'm very weak now. Before I recover, you'd better not look for me again. After listening to the little Qilin's reply, Ningyu's mouth was slightly agape, a little dumbfounded. After such a long time, the little Qilin still hadn't recovered. At the same time, Ningyu had a headache. If little Qilin couldn't help, it meant that human demons would be the main force against Emperor Divine Palace. Back in the Moling Mountain Range, Ningyu had a lot of confidence in the human demon. But now, Ningyu's mood wasn't that optimistic. The reason was the unforeseen event that had occurred in the Emperor God Palace. We'll reach the main entrance of the Emperor God Palace after passing through the barrier in front. Leading Ningyu and the human demon, Sun Deshan finally stopped in front of a snow-white barrier. Pointing at the white barrier, Sun Deshan explained, "This barrier is very special. Only the people from the Emperor Palace can enter. If anyone else tries to barge in, they will trigger the surrounding killing formations and kill them." You mean we can't go in? Human demon frowned slightly. No, that's not what I meant. Sun Deshan hurriedly waved his hand and said, "I just want you to wait here for a while. I'll go in and inform the people of the Emperor Palace, and then—" "No need. I have a way to break the barrier." The human demon waved his hand, interrupting Sun Deshan. In the next moment, the demonic human took a step forward, clenched his fists, and punched out. Whoosh! Whoosh! In a split second, 2 rays of cold light shot out and rushed towards the white barrier at a terrifying speed. "No!" Seeing the human demon suddenly attack, Sun Deshan hurriedly cried out, wanting to stop the human demon. However, Sun Deshan was clearly half a beat too late to stop the human demon. Chi! Chi! In the blink of an eye, 2 beams of cold light blasted the white barrier. A sizzling sound rang out. Then, the white barrier caved in, and a gap suddenly appeared. "Go!" The human demon grabbed Ningyu and passed through the gap. This is bad. Seeing that Ningyu and the human devil had crossed the barrier, Sun Deshan knew that he was done for. He hurriedly chased after them. At the rear, Zhang Kajuan and Di Tianming were extremely reluctant to pass through the barrier. Before coming to Emperor Palace, Zhang Kajuan had investigated Emperor Palace and knew everything about it like the back of his hand. There were several theories about the white barrier in front of Emperor Palace. The most convincing theory was that the white barrier was connected to Emperor Palace's palace-protecting grand formation. Once the white barrier was forcibly broken, it would immediately activate the palace-protecting grand formation. For this reason, Zhang Kajuan really didn't want to follow. But there was nothing he could do. In order to get back at Ningyu, in order to reach an agreement with Emperor Palace, he had to follow them. Whoosh! Whoosh! Zhang Kajuan and Di Tianming followed closely, passing through the white barrier in the blink of an eye. Whoosh! No one noticed. There was another figure that passed through the white barrier with Zhang Kajuan and Di Tianming. It was just that almost no one noticed that figure. Rumble. As it turned out, Sun Deshan's warning was correct. As soon as they passed through the white barrier, Human Demon and Ningyu were hit by a terrifying attack. On the other side of the white barrier, the void trembled and countless cold rays of light rushed out of the void, blasting toward Ningyu and Human Demon. Since Ningyu and Human Demon were the first to pass through the barrier, most of the cold rays of light regarded them as the #1 enemy. As for Sun Deshun, Zhang Kajuan, and Di Tianming, they were under much less pressure. Child's play. Human Demon obviously didn't care about the cold rays of light that were attacking him. He waved his right hand casually, and in an instant, several palm prints flew out and collided with the cold rays of light. Whoosh! The cold rays and the palm prints collided. The result was a little beyond Sun Deshun's expectations. It was Human Demon's palm prints that won. Is there something wrong with the palace-protecting grand formation? Sun Deshun's mouth was slightly open. His first thought was that there was something wrong with the palace-protecting grand formation. When Sun Deshun and the other saints arrived at Emperor Palace, the first thing they did was to strengthen the palace-protecting grand formation to ensure that the invaders would suffer. Sun Deshun couldn't believe the current situation. The formation that was strengthened by the power of several saints was actually no match for Human Demon. Not many people would believe this if word got out. That's all. After casually repelling the cold rays of light, Human Demon curled his lips and said indifferently, "It seems that there's nothing scary about Emperor Palace." As he spoke, Human Demon raised his head and looked at the main gate of Emperor Palace in the distance. His right foot stepped on the ground, and his figure quickly swept over. Judging from Human Demon's words, it was obvious that he wanted to force his way into Emperor Palace. Trespassers of Emperor Palace die. Before the Human Demon came to the front gate of the Sovereign Palace, a robust voice resounded from the Sovereign Palace. Creak! Then, the main door of the Emperor Palace slowly opened, and two figures strode out of the Emperor Palace. Ningyu's eyes moved and fell on the two figures. Ningyu wasn't familiar with one of the figures, but from the aura exuding from his body, Ningyu guessed that he should be at the early stage of Saint Realm. As for the other figure, Ningyu couldn't be more familiar with him. The current palace master of Emperor Palace, Di Xiao. Ningyu only had one thought in his mind about Di Xiao, the executioner who broke up his family in this life, and that was to kill him. However, Ningyu was very clear that with his current strength, even if he used all his trump cards, he would still be no match for Di Xiao. This was because Di Xiao's cultivation had increased by a small level compared to when he went to Moling Mountain Range not long ago. Early stage of Saint Realm. Not long ago, Di Xiao was still at the half stage of Saint Realm. Not long after, Di Xiao's cultivation had actually increased to the early stage of Saint Realm. So it's you little bastard. When Ningyu noticed Di Xiao's eyes also fell on Ningyu. Chapter 1723. Chapter 1723. Betrayal. Old dog, we're doomed to end the feud between us today. Ningyu clenched his fists, and a ferocious look appeared on his face. Di Xiao had destroyed his family, and he had to avenge it. At this moment, Ningyu even wanted to use the Qilin lifeblood. The Qilin lifeblood was comparable to the True Dragon lifeblood, and it contained extremely terrifying energy. With Ningyu's current cultivation, he had no chance of winning even against a half-saint, let alone an early-stage saint like Di Xiao. However, since the enemy had already said so much, if they were to retreat blindly, they would be completely suppressed by the other party in terms of momentum. Therefore, Ningyu secretly made up his mind. Today, even if he had to use the Qilin lifeblood and risk the risk of being devoured, he would let Di Xiao know who he could and could not offend. Ha! Di Xiao seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. He threw his head back and laughed wildly, and then said in a sinister tone, "A mere early-stage Sky Supreme trash wants to end things with me? You're overestimating yourself." As soon as he said the word strength, Di Xiao's figure flashed, and he rushed towards Ningyu. Di Xiao's intention was clear. He wanted to severely injure Ningyu, and let Ningyu know what cruelty was. Seeing Di Xiao approaching him, Ningyu did not dare to be careless. He hurriedly separated a wisp of his soul power into his storage ring and wanted to use the Qilin lifeblood. Come back. However, before Ningyu could use the Qilin lifeblood, the other martial artist who came out with Di Xiao said in a deep voice, "Stay aside, and don't speak without my permission." Swish! Di Xiao had originally wanted to severely injure Ningyu, but the sudden shout in his ear made him not dare to have the slightest bit of hesitation. He immediately turned around and returned to the back of another warrior. The sudden change not only surprised Ningyu, but even the human demon was a little shocked. Moving his eyes, the human demon's eyes fell on the other martial artist. Middle stage saint? The human demon's perception was much stronger than Ningyu's. Ningyu deduced that the warrior in front of Emperor Shao was at the early stage of Saint Realm, but the human devil deduced that the warrior was at the middle stage of Saint Realm. Even though he knew that the other party was a mid-stage saint, the human demon did not show any fear. There was no other reason. The other party was only at the Saint Intermediate stage and had not reached the peak of the Saint Intermediate stage. In other words, a single human demon could easily deal with several martial artists of this level. Hee, an esteemed guest has arrived. Please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. The warrior in front of Emperor Shao smiled at the human devil and said, "Let me introduce myself. My name is Yijiming." I don't care if you're Yijiming or Zhou Jiming. I only have one request today. The human demon didn't give Yijiming any face. He raised his right hand, pointed at Di Xiao, and said, "Take his life." Hua! The human demon's words made Yijiming's face darken. Yijiming thought that speaking to the human devil in this tone was already giving the human devil enough face. Who would have thought that the human demon would not know when to back down and would actually want to kill Di Xiao in front of him? No matter what, Di Xiao was the current palace lord of Emperor God Palace, and his talent was extremely high. One of the reasons he came down from a higher plane this time was because of Di Xiao. Now that the human demon wanted to kill Di Xiao, how could Yijiming tolerate it? I'm giving you face, but you don't want it. Yijiming was thoroughly enraged. The anger on his face burst out unabashedly. Sun Deshun, what are you waiting for? I order you to act now and take down this arrogant bastard. Yijiming stared at Sun Deshun and said coldly. Yijiming was no fool. On the contrary, being sent down from a higher plane, Yijiming was very, very smart and could be said to be extraordinarily intelligent. Because the human demon had slightly concealed his aura, Yijiming didn't know what the human demon's cultivation was. To be on the safe side, Yijiming would definitely let Sun Deshun test the human demon's strength first before deciding whether or not to suppress the human demon. This, hearing Yijiming's order, Sun Deshun's entire face turned bitter. It's better to make enemies than to resolve them. In my opinion, we should all sit down and have a good talk, lest both sides suffer. Biting his lip, Sun Deshun said something that greatly angered Yijiming. The human demon was about to kill Di Xiao, and you actually said something like, "It's better to make enemies than to resolve them." This was simply boosting the other's morale and diminishing your own prestige. Yijiming was especially furious. In fact, Sun Deshun was very helpless, extremely helpless. Yijiming didn't know, but his heart was as clear as a mirror. The control of his body no longer belonged to him. Not long ago, when he was chasing after the human demon with Di Tianming, he was already controlled by the human demon. It could be said that if the human demon wanted him dead by midnight, he would definitely not live past midnight. Going against the human demon for Yijiming, Sun Deshun wasn't that stupid. In fact, Sun Deshun even made a simple analysis of the current situation. In terms of raw strength, Yijiming wasn't the human demon's match. Even if all the sages from the higher planes joined forces, they still might not be the human demon's match. Under this premise, even if the human demon wanted him to attack Yijiming, he would do it without hesitation. Sun Deshun, I'll give you one last chance. Taking a deep breath, Yijiming tried his best to calm himself down. The more critical the moment, the less flustered he was. This was the main reason Yijiming was sent down. Kill him, and I'll pretend today's matter never happened. Otherwise, I'll hand you over to the disciplinary hall. He Jiming pointed at the human demon and said coldly, "This is your last chance. I hope you don't do anything stupid. Kill Di Xiao." Before Sun Deshun could answer He Jiming, the human demon's words came out. Xiao. As soon as the human demon's voice fell, Sun Deshun dashed towards Di Xiao without another word. Even though Di Xiao was behind He Jiming, and killing Di Xiao required a direct confrontation with He Jiming, Sun Deshun didn't hesitate. Because there were only two paths in front of Sun Deshun. If he killed Di Xiao, he had a chance of survival. If he didn't kill Di Xiao, he would die without a doubt. One thought gave him a chance to live, the other a chance to die. Even a fool would know what to choose. You've disappointed me too much. Looking at Sun Deshun's foolish choice, He Jiming's eyes revealed a trace of disappointment. This look of disappointment only appeared in He Jiming's eyes for a second, and it disappeared after a second. Leave him to me. Just as He Jiming was about to kill Sun Deshun himself, Di Xiao took a step forward and said, "Let me get rid of this scum of the sect." All right. He Jiming originally wanted to kill Sun Deshun himself, but after hearing Di Xiao's words, he nodded lightly and took a few steps back. If Di Xiao could kill Sun Deshun himself, then even if he went to a higher plane, he wouldn't be marginalized. It was equivalent to having an umbrella of protection. Chapter 17:24. Chapter 17:24. Chapter 17:24 Standpoint Kill. After getting He Jiming's approval, Di Xiao's eyes lit up with excitement. Although he had become a sage, Di Xiao knew very well that his position in the hearts of He Jiming and the others was not high. If he could kill Sun Deshun, he would be able to prove himself. He would be able to prove that he was worthy of their attention. With a low growl, Di Xiao charged forward instead of retreating. In the blink of an eye, he was already far away. In the first move, Di Xiao did not hold back. A terrifying amount of primordial qi gathered on his fist, which fiercely collided with Sun Deshun's fist. Bang! The two fists collided. A crisp sound rang out and spread out in all directions. Whoosh! Whoosh! After one move, the two figures retreated rapidly. Di Xiao is so strong. The first exchange between Sun Deshun and Di Xiao had completely overturned Ning Yu's knowledge. From Ning Yu's point of view, Di Xiao had just reached the early stage of the Saint Realm, so he was definitely no match for Sun Deshun. However, it seemed that Di Xiao and Sun Deshun were evenly matched. This discovery almost made Ning Yu cry out. If Di Xiao had been an ordinary early stage Saint Realm warrior, Ning Yu might have been able to contend with him after activating his Qilin blood. Who would have thought that Di Xiao, an early stage Sage Realm warrior, could be on par with Sun Deshun, who was at the peak of the early stage Sage Realm? This was rather awkward. No matter how confident Ning Yu was in himself and in his Qilin blood, he knew that he was no match for Sun Deshun. Even if he used his Qilin origin blood, it was impossible for him to defeat Sun Deshun. Therefore, now that Di Xiao and Sun Deshun were evenly matched, Ning Yu was shocked speechless. This Di Xiao is indeed very strong. He can actually fight evenly with Sun Deshun, who only has 50% of his strength. His martial arts talent is just SOSO. As if sensing the shock in Ning Yu's voice, the human demon nodded. But no matter how strong he is destined to be killed today. I can't believe it. Hearing the human demon's words, Ning Yu cursed. The worry in his heart lessened a little. In the previous exchange, Ning Yu knew that Di Xiao had used his full strength. Di Xiao had used his full strength, while Sun Deshun had only used 50% of his strength. It seemed that Di Xiao was not as strong as he had imagined. Sun Deshun, between you and Di Xiao, only one can live. The human demon didn't notice the change in Ning Yu's expression. He said in a clear voice, "Him or you, it's your choice." Boom! The human demon's words exploded in Sun Deshun's ears like a bomb. Die! Sun Deshun knew that he had not used his full strength in the first move, which had angered the human demon. If he lost the human demon's trust, then his little life would come to an end. Taking a deep breath, Sun Deshun decided to launch a powerful attack and kill Di Xiao with a single strike. Sun Deshun had thought of a way out for himself. After killing Di Xiao with a single strike, he returned to the human demon's side before He Jiming and the other saints could react. This was the only way he could keep his life. Otherwise, even if he killed Di Xiao, He Jiming and the other saint were bound to kill him. Cold words came out of Sun Deshun's mouth. In the next instant, Sun Deshun tore through the void and dove in. Wong. The moment Sun Deshun's foot entered the void, he appeared in front of Di Xiao. Clenching his right hand into a fist, Sun Deshun threw a punch that brought along a raging gale of Yuan Qi, right at Di Xiao's heart. Since he had decided to kill Di Xiao, Sun Deshun would not hold back. Killing Di Xiao with a single strike was Sun Deshun's only chance of survival. Not good. Di Xiao did not expect Sun Deshun to be so terrifying. His first thought was not to fight Sun Deshun head-on, but to dodge to the side. But Di Xiao had obviously underestimated Sun Deshun. In order to survive, Sun Deshun had used all his strength. The speed of Sun Deshun's punch was twice as fast as usual. Bang! Even though Di Xiao tried his best to dodge, he could not avoid Sun Deshun's punch. The iron-like fist landed on Di Xiao's body with no way to dodge. Fortunately, Di Xiao reacted in time and moved his body slightly to the side, which made Sun Deshun's fist only hit on his chest instead of his heart. Otherwise, Sun Deshun's punch would have been enough to make Di Xiao go home and plant sweet potatoes. Even so, Di Xiao also tasted the pain. Sun Deshun's fist landed on Di Xiao's chest, and several of his ribs were broken. Pucci. Di Xiao's breath dropped from the early-stage sage realm to the freezing point. I can't let Di Xiao live. Although Di Xiao was seriously injured, he was not dead. As long as Di Xiao was alive, Sun Deshun would feel very uneasy. Looking back at Human Demon's cold face, Sun Deshun gritted his teeth and decided to follow up. He must eliminate Di Xiao. Crash! However, before Sun Deshun could reach Di Xiao, the void around him suddenly split open and several figures rushed out. Damn it! The sudden appearance of several figures made Sun Deshun's face turn extremely ugly. Sun Deshun knew these warriors. They were all warriors who had descended from a higher plane with him. Although Sun Deshun's strength was enough to rank in the top 2 among this batch of Sage Realm warriors, he still felt his scalp go numb. Sun Deshun was not afraid of facing one alone. But facing so many people at the same time, even Sun Deshun felt that it was very difficult. Come back. At this time, Human Demon waved his hand, indicating for Sun Deshun to come back first. Good, good, good. Human Demon's words were even more pleasant to Sun Deshun's ears than the sound of nature. Sun Deshun hurriedly turned around and quickly returned to Human Demon's side. The sudden appearance of more than a dozen sages instantly broke the balance of the situation. On Divine Emperor Palace's side, He Jiming and more than a dozen sages, plus Di Xiao with broken ribs, formed an extremely terrifying force. On Human Demon's side, other than Human Demon himself, there were only Sun Deshun and Ningyu. As for Di Tianming and Zhang Kejuan, their faces were very ugly at the moment. They wanted to stand on the same side as Divine Emperor Palace, but they did not dare to act rashly. One had to know that they were very close to Human Demon. If they angered him, they would definitely not have a good ending. If Human Demon behaved a little closer to them, it would be terrible. You two come here. For Di Tianming and Zhang Kejuan, whatever they feared had come true. Hearing Human Demon's indifferent words, they almost cried out loud. In the current situation, even Ghost knew that He Jiming had the absolute upper hand. Now that Human Demon had dragged them into the water, he really had ulterior motives. Resist. Zhang Kejuan and Di Tianming looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's eyes. If they were tied to Human Demon, they would definitely be finished. Therefore, Zhang Kejuan and Di Tianming immediately decided to cut off relations with Human Demon. We are from the demonic spirit realm Zhang family. This time, we came mainly to ally with Divine Emperor Palace. Where did you clowns come from? How dare you behave so atrociously here? Chapter 1725. Devouring Vortex. Zhang Kajuan concluded. As long as he and the human demon were clear, He Jiming would definitely be on his side. The human demon's cultivation was at the peak of the mid-stage Saint Realm. Coupled with Sun Deshan, who was at the peak of the early-stage Saint Realm, his strength was terrifying. He Jiming and a dozen early-stage Saint Realm experts alone might not be a match for the human demon and the others. At this time, if Di Tianming helped to restrain Sun Deshan, then He Jiming and a dozen early-stage Saint Realm experts would have a high chance of killing the human demon. Therefore, Zhang Kajuan concluded that He Jiming would definitely be on his side. When we fight later, you only have one task. The human demon's expression was indifferent. Without even looking at Zhang Kajuan, he directly said to Ningyu, "I don't care what method you use. In short, just take his life." Understood. Ningyu nodded heavily. Ningyu was very clear about his own strength. Under the premise that he didn't use his Qilin origin blood, he could only contend with Zhang Kajuan among the martial artists in this area. Now that the human demon handed Zhang Kajuan to him, he naturally wouldn't refuse. Kill. The human demon didn't waste any time. After hastily instructing Ningyu, he dashed toward Di Tianming at high speed. Boom! Displaying the aura of a peak mid-stage Saint Realm expert, the human demon used his full strength in his first move to directly kill Di Tianming. Zhang Chang, save me. Seeing that he was the human demon's first target, Di Tianming retreated while shouting for help. Buzz. As soon as Zhang Chang's cry for help sounded, the void trembled, and Zhang Chang appeared out of thin air. Bang! As soon as he appeared, Zhang Chang clenched his right hand into a fist and collided with the human demons. The two fists collided, and a crisp sound rang out. Then, two figures retreated in a straight line, one after the other. What? This Zhang Chang's strength is so terrifying. No wonder that half-saint brat dared to be so arrogant. It turns out that he has something to rely on. The first exchange between Zhang Chang and the human demon caused the surrounding saints to exclaim. The human demon was at the peak of the sage intermediate stage. The fact that Zhang Chang could fight evenly with the human demon was enough to show how powerful he was. Without using the trump card given to me by the sect, it is impossible for me to be a match for the two of them. He Jiming's eyes were fixed on human demon and Zhang Chang. His heart was in turmoil. In the beginning, He Jiming had roughly estimated the human demon's battle prowess. According to He Jiming's speculations, the human demon's strength should be on par with his. But now, after seeing the fight between the two, He Jiming knew that he was wrong, very wrong. Under normal circumstances, the two of them would not be a match for the human devil. However, He Jiming was not particularly worried. He came from a higher plane and had a trump card left behind for him by his sect. Once he used his trump card, He Jiming believed that the human demon was no match for him. Let the two of them fight each other first. When their strength is almost exhausted, I will come out to clean up the mess. He Jiming's lips curled into a smile as he swept his gaze across the surrounding saint martialists. He Jiming came from a higher plane. He didn't care about the devil spirit realm, the Zhang family, the Bai family, or the Yin family. In He Jiming's heart, apart from the people of Emperor God Palace, everyone was an enemy. Ha. The fight between human demon and Zhang Chang did not affect Zhang Kajuan. Instead, Zhang Kajuan threw his head back and laughed. Your umbrella is gone. Let's see if you can survive this. As soon as the word die fell, Zhang Kajuan quickly rushed out. Terrifying yuan qi fluctuations erupted from his body as he fiercely charged at Ningyu. Zhang Kajuan was most afraid of human demon. Now that human demon was entangled by Zhang Chang, Zhang Kajuan naturally had no scruples. Zhang Chang entangled human demon while Di Tianming stared at Sun Deshan. On the other side, He Jiming chose to bide his time. Everything was extremely beneficial to Zhang Kajuan. Zhang Kajuan had made up his mind to kill Ningyu. He must not give Ningyu a chance to live. Black Dragon Sword. Ningyu did not waste time talking to Zhang Kajuan. He directly took out the Black Dragon Sword, injected the yuan qi in his sea of consciousness, and slashed out. Qi, a waist-thick sword light peeled off from the black dragon sword, drew a beautiful arc in the air, and chopped straight towards Zhang Kejuan. Insignificant skill. Because of his previous experience with Ningyu, Zhang Kejuan learned to be smart this time. On the surface, Zhang Kejuan showed a sloppy look, as if he did not take Ningyu seriously at all. But in reality, that was not the case. This time, Zhang Kejuan focused 120%. This was because Zhang Kejuan knew that whether or not he could reach an agreement with He Jiming and the others, his fight with Ningyu would play a key role. As long as he could easily kill Ningyu, He Jiming would definitely think highly of him and the Devil Spirit Realm Zhang family. Therefore, Zhang Kejuan used his trump card as soon as he made his move. Buzz! Zhang Kejuan suddenly stopped in midair and made a grabbing motion with his right hand. Then, a small vortex suddenly appeared. After the small vortex appeared, a terrifying, devouring power burst out from the vortex. The moment the black dragon sword light that Ningyu slashed out came into contact with the vortex, it was devoured by the devouring power that erupted from the vortex. What? This change obviously caused Ningyu to be slightly surprised. The might of the black dragon sword light was something that even a pinnacle sky supreme wouldn't dare to face head-on. But now, Zhang Kejuan had only used a vortex to block the black dragon sword light. Ningyu's face was dark. He wasn't sure if this was Zhang Kejuan's strongest trump card. If it was, then there was a chance that he could use the demonic lotus flame to kill Zhang Kejuan. If this wasn't Zhang Kejuan's strongest trump card, then it would bode ill for him today. Again, Ningyu gritted his teeth and injected the yuan qi in his body into the black dragon sword again, slashing out several more sword lights. Whoosh! The overwhelming sword lights rushed out and slashed at Zhang Kejuan from all directions. Ha ha! You want to get close to me with these useless sword lights? What a fool's dream. Zhang Kejuan's unbridled laughter resounded in the area. To Zhang Kejuan, using this trump card to deal with Ningyu was probably the wisest decision he had made recently. Zhang Kejuan had many trump cards, and any one of them could erupt with extremely powerful power. However, the other trump cards were all one-time attacks. Only this trump card was the devouring vortex. No matter how dense the yuan qi in Ningyu's body was, or how many sword lights he executed, it was of no use against the devouring vortex. Demonic lotus flame. Hearing Zhang Kejuan's unbridled laughter, Ningyu decided to use the demonic lotus flame. Through the black dragon sword lights, Ningyu roughly determined the devouring vortex's endurance. It would be difficult to use the sword lights, or soul power, to dissipate the devouring vortex. Chapter 1726. Almost. Ningyu's goal was to kill Zhang Kejuan. Therefore, Ningyu would not give up on the chance to destroy the devouring whirlpool. With the black dragon sword in hand, Ningyu charged forward. As he advanced, Ningyu wrapped the demonic lotus flame around the black dragon sword, hoping to succeed in one try. Have you lost your mind? Seeing Ningyu's actions, Zhang Kejuan's lips curled up. He said darkly, "Since you want to give me the flying sword, it would be impolite of me to refuse." Even a fool could tell that Ningyu wanted to use the black dragon sword to attack the devouring whirlpool. Zhang Kejuan was very confident in the devouring whirlpool's endurance. A mere black dragon sword would definitely not be a threat to the devouring whirlpool. "I'll take the flying sword first, then I'll kill you." Seeing Ningyu approaching the devouring whirlpool, Zhang Kejuan was a little excited. What? All of a sudden, Zhang Kejuan seemed to have discovered something horrifying, and he immediately shouted, "Xiao!" As Ningyu approached the devouring whirlpool, he suddenly waved the black dragon sword in his hand. In an instant, a flame rushed out of the black dragon sword and entered the devouring whirlpool. Chi-Chi. The devouring whirlpool could block the sword light and soul power, but it could not block the exotic flame. Under the attack of the demonic lotus flame, the devouring whirlpool was completely destroyed in an instant. Ah! I want you dead." Seeing the devouring whirlpool destroyed, Zhang Kajuan shouted crazily, wanting to use his second trump card. However, how could Ningyu give Zhang Kajuan the chance to use his second trump card? Zhang Kajuan had just waved his hands when Ningyu's sword pierced into Zhang Kajuan's chest. Puchi! A tearing pain came from his chest, causing Zhang Kajuan to spit out a mouthful of blood. His aura was rapidly declining. Not good. Originally, Zhang Chong was fighting with the human demon, and the battle between the two sides had reached a white-hot point. However, when Zhang Chong saw Zhang Kajuan vomiting blood after being punched by Ningyu, he immediately changed his expression and wanted to help. "You dare to be distracted while fighting me? You're simply seeking death." How could the human demon miss such a rare opportunity? Almost at the moment when Zhang Chong was distracted, the human devil suddenly rushed out and punched towards Zhang Chong's head with a violent Yuan Qi wind. Hit the snake where it hurts. Since there was such a good opportunity, the human demon would not hold back. As long as this punch could hit Zhang Chong's head, even if Zhang Chong didn't die, his combat effectiveness would drop several times. This was the result that the human demon wanted. Damn it! Zhang Chong knew very well that if he continued to stubbornly help Zhang Kajuan, the human demon would seize the opportunity to injure him. Once he was seriously injured by the human devil, he would definitely die in the following confrontation. For the sake of survival, Zhang Chong cursed inwardly. Soon after, he shouted at Di Tianming, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go help Zhang Kajuan. If anything happens to Zhang Kajuan, you can forget about living." Yes. Hearing Zhang Chong's words, Di Tianming didn't dare tarry. He rushed out, wanting to save Zhang Kajuan before Ningyu killed him. In truth, Di Tianming was extremely unwilling. Although Di Tianming hadn't fought with Sun Deshun, Sun Deshun's attention was completely on him. If he dared to divert his attention to help Zhang Kajuan, he would definitely be ambushed by Sun Deshun. Di Tianming and Sun Deshun were both at the peak of the primary sage realm, so they were evenly matched in a head-on fight. If one of them ambushed the other would definitely be heavily injured. However, Di Tianming had no other choice. Zhang Kajuan was a quasi-war god of the Zhang clan in the Devil Spirit realm. His status was much higher than Di Tianming's. If anything happened to Zhang Kajuan, Di Tianming wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Therefore, even at the risk of being heavily injured, Di Tianming still rushed towards Ningyu without hesitation. Whoosh! As expected, as soon as Di Tianming rushed out, Sun Deshun followed closely behind. Before the battle between the demon and Zhang Chong, he had already given Sun Deshun an order. Stop Di Tianming. Therefore, when he saw Di Tianming make a move, Sun Deshun also rushed out without hesitation. He had to stop Di Tianming. Relatively speaking, Sun Deshun faced much more pressure than Di Tianming. If Di Tianming couldn't stop Ningyu, then Ningyu would just kill Zhang Kajuan. Di Tianming wouldn't die immediately. If Sun Deshun couldn't stop Di Tianming, then the demon would kill him immediately. Pressure. Sun Deshun and Di Tianming weren't on the same level at all. I'm the quasi-war god of the Zhang clan. If you dare to kill me, you'll become the enemy of the entire Zhang clan. Seeing that Ningyu was about to reach him, Zhang Kajuan couldn't help but use the Zhang clan to intimidate Ningyu. Unfortunately, Ningyu was an immortal spirit realm cultivator. Even if he did, he wouldn't have held back, not to mention that he didn't know how powerful the Zhang family was. Even if he spared Zhang Kajuan's life, Zhang Kajuan would definitely become the enemy of Ningyu again after he regrouped. Ningyu saw this clearly. Therefore, he didn't show any mercy. He was determined to kill Zhang Kajuan in one move. Go help him. In front of the main entrance of Emperor God Palace, He Jiming frowned slightly and nodded to the early stage sage beside him. After much consideration, He Jiming still felt that he should help Zhang Kajuan. He Jiming saved Zhang Kajuan not because he was afraid of the Zhang clan in the demonic spirit realm, but because he wanted to get some benefits from the Zhang clan. Of course, the key to getting benefits was Zhang Kajuan. Therefore, Zhang Kajuan couldn't die. Swoosh! Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. He Jiming's voice was heard. The four-sage, early-stage martial artist beside him rushed out and rushed towards Ningyu from four directions. Retreat. Although Ningyu wanted to kill Zhang Kejuan, he immediately decided to let Zhang Kejuan go when he sensed that there were four initial Sage Realm experts rushing towards him. He immediately retreated. Where there's life, there's hope. If even a mountain was gone, there would really be no firewood to burn. Whoosh! Di Tianming took a deep breath when he saw the martial artists of Emperor Divine Palace intervening. He turned around and fought with Sun Deshan in a hurry. Since the Emperor Palace had sent four sages, Zhang Kejuan's life was no longer in danger. Since Zhang Kejuan's life was no longer in danger, Di Tianming naturally had to deal with Sun Deshan. Humph! We'll fight later. Human Demon had been paying attention to what was happening on Ningyu's side. When the four sages from Emperor God Palace appeared, Human Demon snorted and forced Zhang Chang to retreat. Then, he flew out and protected Ningyu behind him. Human Demon's sudden retreat made Zhang Chang look as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. Because he was worried about Zhang Kejuan, Zhang Chang was suppressed by Human Demon. Now that Human Demon had retreated, the pressure on Zhang Chang instantly disappeared and he became relaxed. We can deal with him together. At this time. Chapter 1727. Chapter 1727. Chapter 1727. Lure the tiger away from the mountain. All right. Hearing He Jiming's words, Zhang Chang responded almost without thinking. Let's join forces and kill this arrogant guy. Zhang Chang was annoyed by the Human Demon. To be honest, Zhang Chang did not think that he was weaker than the human devil in terms of raw strength. However, he needed to care about Zhang Kejuan's life, so the Human Demon seized this opportunity. Now that He Jiming came forward to help, Zhang Chang had already sentenced Human Devil to death in his heart. Go! Exchanging glances, He Jiming and Zhang Chang dashed out at the same time, one on the left and one on the right. You're responsible for protecting Ningyu. If anything happens to Ningyu, I will hold you accountable. Seeing He Jiming and Zhang Chang charging at him, the Human Demon didn't respond immediately. Instead, he ordered Sun Deshan. The Human Demon played a key role in Ningyu's visit to the Emperor Divine Palace. No matter what, the Human Demon would never let Ningyu be in danger. As long as I am alive, I will never let Ningyu be threatened. Sun Deshan nodded heavily, revealing a determined look. Sun Deshan's life was in the hands of the Human Demon. If he didn't make his stance clear now, the Human Demon would probably kill him right away to prevent any future troubles. You overestimate yourself. Seeing the Human Demon's arrogance, Zhang Chang revealed a ferocious gaze and said viciously, "This day next year will be your death anniversary. Don't talk nonsense with him. Attack with everything you have." He Jiming saw it more clearly than Zhang Chang. As an expert from a high-level plane, He Jiming's horizons were much higher than Zhang Chang's. Since the Human Demon dared to be so arrogant, it meant that he definitely had a trump card to deal with it. At this moment, the only way was to strike with all his strength and deal a fatal blow to the Human Demon before he used his trump card. Otherwise, when the Human Demon used his trump card, the situation would become even more confusing. However, even though He Jiming knew that the Human Demon would use his trump card, he did not reveal it himself. He Jiming had come down from a high-level plane with a very important mission on his shoulders. If he used his trump card now, then the mission would definitely fail. Between the quest and killing the homicidal demon, He Jiming chose the quest without hesitation, giving up the chance to kill the homicidal demon in one strike. Insignificant skill. How could Human Demon not know that Zhang Chang and He Jiming would go all out? With a flick of his wrist, he quickly took out the last drop of Qilin blood and swallowed it in front of everyone. What? Qilin blood? As soon as the Human Demon took out the Qilin origin blood, He Jiming and Zhang Chang's expressions changed. He Jiming came from a higher plane, while Zhang Chang was a peak expert in the Devil Spirit realm. The two of them naturally knew what a terrifying thing a Qilin's lifeblood was. Now that the human devil had taken out the Qilin's natal blood, the two of them immediately decided to retreat and avoid the brunt of the attack. Buzz. The facts proved that He Jiming and Zhang Chang's choice was right. As soon as the Qilin blood entered the human devil's mouth, the human devil used a secret art to fuse it into his body. Half of the Qilin origin blood fiercely suppressed the energy seal in the human devil's body, while the other half constantly replenished the human devil's meridians. In the next instant, an extremely terrifying aura surged from the human devil's body. Late-stage saint. At this moment, the human devil's cultivation broke through to the late-stage saint realm. The human devil didn't let the excitement of the breakthrough get to his head. Instead, he was extremely calm. The human devil knew very well that the reason he could use the Qilin origin blood to break through the barrier and restore his cultivation to the late-stage saint realm was all because of his special physique. After all, in his previous life, the human devil's cultivation had far surpassed that of a saint. At the same time, the human devil knew very well that due to the powerful suppression of the energy seal, he couldn't maintain his late-stage saint cultivation for too long. His preliminary estimate was that after an hour, his cultivation would drop sharply. At that time, let alone He Jiming and Zhang Chang, even a warrior at the early stage of the sage realm could defeat the human devil. The situation was very grim to kill or subdue He Jiming and the others in an hour. Because He Jiming, Zhang Chang, and even Di Xiao and Zhang Kaijuan had retreated back into the Emperor Divine Palace. Moreover, in order to resist the human devil's attack, He Jiming didn't hesitate to activate the palace protecting formation. Swish! The human devil didn't waste even a second. After his cultivation recovered to the late-stage saint realm, he immediately moved and punched the palace protecting formation of the Emperor Divine Palace. Bang! The huge rebound force directly bounced the human devil back. On the other hand, the palace protecting formation of the Emperor Divine Palace didn't move at all. So what if you use the Qilin origin blood? You still can't break the palace protecting formation. Standing within the palace protection formation, He Jiming's lips curled into an arc as he said sinisterly, "When the power of your Qilin origin blood weakens, I'll bring everyone out to skin you alive." Senior human devil, why don't we avoid it first? Ningyu knew that the human devil must be under some kind of great pressure after swallowing the Qilin origin blood. Once the pressure passed, the human devil's cultivation would drop to the freezing point. Instead of stubbornly attacking the palace protecting formation of the Emperor Divine Palace, it was better to retreat to the Emperor's city and occupy an advantageous position there before fighting with He Jiming and the others. Retreat. The human devil pondered for a moment and felt that Ningyu's proposal was not bad. To reach the Emperor Palace, they had to pass through the Emperor's city. Similarly, to leave the Emperor Palace, they also had to pass through the Emperor's city. Therefore, as long as Ningyu could occupy the Emperor's city, they could stop He Jiming and the others from leaving and cut off their contact with the outside world. Under such circumstances, He Jiming and Zhang Chang would definitely send people to break out. The moment they broke out would be the best time for Ningyu and the human devil. Senior, we can do this first. Although Ningyu proposed to retreat to the Emperor's city, Ningyu quietly whispered a few words to the human devil during the retreat. The human devil's eyes lit up. He immediately used the clone technique to abandon two of his clones and quietly hid in the void. Under the instruction of the human devil, Sun Deshun and the two clones rushed to the Emperor's city without stopping. The human devil only gave Sun Deshun one task: occupy the Emperor's city and delay as much time as possible. In order to survive, Sun Deshun had no choice but to do as the human devil said. Are they really going to attack the Emperor's city? Di Tianming's face darkened when he saw the human devil and the others quietly leaving. There were at least a few Sage Realm overlords of the Zhang family in the Emperor's city. If the human devil took Sun Deshun to attack the Emperor's city, the Zhang family's overlords would definitely die. Chapter 1728. Chapter 1728. The Key do you know when the effect of the Qilin lifeblood will weaken? He Jiming stared at Di Tianming and asked, if we send someone to Emperor's City, what should we do if the human demon ambushes us there? Well, He Jiming's words made Di Tianming's mouth slightly open. He was a bit speechless. In fact, Di Tianming also knew that He Jiming's worries were not unreasonable. They were all watching when the human demon swallowed the Qilin lifeblood. A drop of Qilin lifeblood could raise the cultivation of the human demon from the mid-stage to the late stage in a short period of time. Such a terrifying speed of improvement made all of them shudder. If they rashly went to Emperor's City at this time, it was very likely that they would be ambushed by the human demon. We still have to go to Emperor's City, but not now. He Jiming's attitude softened a little when he saw Zhang Chang's pale face. I will go with you in half an hour to Emperor's City. No problem. Zhang Chang nodded, indicating that there was no problem. He Jiming was only worried about when the aura of the human demon would decline, but Zhang Chang had to worry about the safety of the Zhang clan warriors in Emperor City. In order to reach an agreement with Emperor Palace, they brought a lot of sages with them to go to Emperor Palace. It was not good news for the Zhang clan that the human demon retreated to Emperor City at this time. Senior human demon, how long can your late-stage sage cultivation last? Ningyu asked quietly in the void. Sun Deshun went to Emperor City with his 2 avatars, while Ningyu and the human demon hid in the void. With the help of the human demon, Ningyu was not worried about being discovered by He Jiming and the others. After all, the human demon was a person from higher plane. Although he was suppressed by the energy seal, he was still very experienced in hiding his aura. 1 hour. The human demon did not hide it from Ningyu. He stretched out a finger and said, my cultivation will drop to the freezing point in an hour, so we only have 1 hour left. Ningyu's face became a bit solemn when he heard the human demon's words. An hour was not short, but it was not long either. The key point was not the human demon, but He Jiming's group. As long as He Jiming and Zhang Chang left the Emperor Palace within an hour, Ningyu would have the opportunity to take control of the Emperor Palace, luring the tiger away from the mountain. This move was called luring the tiger away from the mountain. Drip, drip. Time was ticking away. In the void, Ningyu and human demon were very nervous, and so were He Jiming and Zhang Chang. Both sides were betting. Go. In the blink of an eye, half an hour had passed. He Jiming first unleashed his perception and probed the surroundings for a while. Then, with a wave of his hand, he was the first to fly into the distance. Voila! Seeing He Jiming leave, Zhang Chang and 4 or 5 early-stage Sage Realm cultivators moved quickly and followed closely behind him. As for Di Tianming, Zhang Kaijuan, Di Xiao, and the rest of the early-stage Saint Realm warriors, they chose to stay in the Emperor Divine Palace. Prepare for both. After all, He Jiming was also worried that human demon would use the trick of luring the tiger away from the mountain. With the help of Di Tianming and the Palace Protection Formation, He Jiming believed that even if human demon hit around, he would not be able to attack the Emperor Palace. Boom! 5 minutes after He Jiming and Zhang Chang left, one of the sages opened the Palace Protection Formation under Di Zhao's instruction. Good chance. Seeing that the Palace Protection Formation was opened, human demon was overjoyed and hurried to rush out of the void. Wait! Before human demon could rush out, Ningyu grabbed his arm and said in a deep voice, be careful. Swish! Human demon saw that he did not have much time left, so he was so impulsive when he saw the Palace Protection Formation was opened. Ningyu's warning immediately made human demon realize that something was wrong. There must be something wrong when something was wrong. He Jiming and Zhang Chang had already left, and Di Xiao chose to open the Palace Protection Formation at this time. Human demon forcibly restrained his impulse to attack and carefully spread his powerful perception around. He really didn't leave. This probing made human demon's face turn a little ugly. Fortunately, Ningyu had reminded him, otherwise he would have rushed out rashly and would have returned empty-handed. He Jiming and Zhang Chang were all hiding at the edge of the Palace Protection Formation. If human demon dared to show his face, they would definitely come out at the first moment and open the palace protection formation. If that happened, the whole plan would collapse. Thank you for the reminder. Taking a deep breath, Human Demon said to Ningyu, if it weren't for you, all the plan would have failed. It's what I should have done. Ningyu said. Right now, Ningyu and Human Demon were in the same boat. To be precise, Ningyu's life was completely in Human Demon's hands. If anything were to happen to the Human Devil, Ningyu would definitely be finished. When are we leaving? In the void next to the palace protection formation, Zhang Chong looked very anxious. They had already delayed for half an hour, and now they were delayed for another 5 minutes. Zhang Chong's lungs were about to explode. There were several sage martial artists from the Zhang family in Emperor City. There were a total of 9 major families in the demon spirit realm, and the Zhang family could only rank in the middle and lower reaches. Once the sage martial artists from the Zhang family in Emperor City were killed by Human Demon, the Zhang family would definitely be in the bottom 3 among the 9 major families. Wait for another 5 minutes. He Jiming said in a deep voice, we'll leave in 5 minutes. Okay, we'll wait for the last 5 minutes, Zhang Chong said, gritting his teeth. He had to lower his head. No matter how strong Zhang Chong was, he had to listen to He Jiming. After all, this was Emperor Palace, and there were more than a dozen sage martial artists around. It was not wise to clash with He Jiming. 5 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. Can we go now? Zhang Chong stared at He Jiming and said coldly, it has already been 40 minutes since the Human Demon left. If we were a step late, the Human Demon would have recovered. At that time, it would be harder for us to kill the Human Demon than to ascend to heaven. Let's go. He Jiming wanted to stay a little longer, but after hearing Zhang Chong's cold words, he immediately decided to leave. Buzz. There was a slight tremor in the void. He Jiming, Zhang Chong, and the others rushed towards Emperor City at a terrifying speed. 5 minutes after He Jiming and Zhang Chong left, when Di Tianming and Di Xiao entered the Emperor Divine Palace, Human Devil and Ningyu heaved a sigh of relief. Then, Human Demon and Ningyu began to use their perception to probe the palace protection formation. Even though He Jiming and Zhang Chong, the 2 most terrifying people, had left, there was still the palace protection formation in front of Ningyu and Human Demon. If he wanted to sneak into the Emperor Palace, he would have to break the palace protection formation without anyone noticing. Chapter 1729. Chapter 1729, a net. However, how difficult was it to break through the palace protecting formation without anyone noticing? Even if the Human Demon recovered to peak Sage Realm, it would still be difficult, much less late-stage Sage Realm. This was because the palace protecting formation had been brought by He Jiming from a high-level realm. Relatively speaking, it was difficult for low-level realms to compete with high-level realms in the field of teleportation formations. While the Human Demon was staring at the palace protecting formation, Ningyu was also staring at it. Undeniably, the palace protection formation of Emperor Palace was too perfect. In Ningyu's opinion, even if Grandmaster Zhao came personally, he wouldn't be able to break through the formation. As for the Human Demon, Ningyu didn't believe that he was much stronger than Grandmaster Zhao. The only thing the Human Demon had that was stronger than Grandmaster Zhao was his cultivation. After devouring a drop of Qilin blood, the Human Demon's cultivation had recovered to late-stage Sage Realm. Late-stage Sage Realm was already at the peak of the Immortal Spirit Realm. However, the cultivation of a late-stage Human Demon Saint was useless against the protective formation of the palace of the Emperor Divine Palace. Screw it. The Human Demon knew that if this dragged on and his aura started to drop, the consequences would be unimaginable. Rather than waiting for death, he might as well give it a try. If he succeeded, he could seize control of the palace. If he failed, he could just think of a way to escape. Hold on, there must be a way. Let me think. Ningyu called out to the Human Demon. At the same time, he was trying to think of a solution. Ningyu knew very well that if the Human Demon rushed out now, he wouldn't be able to break through the formation, even if he used brute force. There was only one chance, and Ningyu didn't want to waste it. What should I do? Ningyu clenched his fists. The helplessness in the depths of his heart made him indifferent. I got it. Suddenly, Ningyu smacked his head and said hurriedly, Senior human demon, how's your disguise technique? Disguise technique? Hearing Ningyu's baffling words, the human demon was taken aback at first, but he quickly came to a realization. Meanwhile, at the main entrance of the Emperor Divine Palace, two martial artists were whispering. Do you think Uncle Chong will be able to stop the massacre of the human demons? Under Di Tianming's treatment, Zhang Kejuan had already recovered. At this moment, Zhang Kejuan was rubbing his hands together with a worried look on his face. Zhang Kejuan was the main person in charge of this trip to Emperor God Palace. It didn't matter if he failed the mission. After all, he was a prospective war god of the Zhang family. Not many people would criticize him. However, if 4 or 5 of the Zhang clan sages died, he would be held responsible. At that time, not only would the title of quasi-war god be taken away, but his life would also be in danger. One had to know that he wasn't the only war god of the Zhang family in the demon spirit realm. With this layer of relationship, the worry on Zhang Kejuan's face was not an act, but a genuine worry. If Zhang Chong is alone, it might be a little difficult. Di Tianming frowned slightly. Then, he changed the topic and said, however, with Yi Jiming bringing 4 or 5 warriors of the initial stage of the Sage Realm to help, this matter is definitely in the bag. I hope so. Although Di Tianming had said this, Zhang Kejuan was still very worried. For Zhang Kejuan, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was in a life-or-death situation. Whoosh! About a minute later, just as Zhang Kejuan and Di Tianming were about to leave, the void outside Emperor God Palace trembled. Then, 2 warriors appeared. Someone is back. The change in the void caused Zhang Kejuan and Di Tianming's expressions to change drastically. They hurriedly opened the main gate of Emperor God Palace and flew out. Creak! As soon as Zhang Kejuan and Di Tianming came out, Di Shao followed them with a dozen sages. After all, this was Emperor God Palace. Di Shao was the palace master of Emperor God Palace. Now that someone had appeared, he naturally had to show up immediately. A high-level plane is indeed terrifying. Di Shao was seriously injured, but he recovered in such a short time. Seeing Di Zhao's lively appearance, Ningyu couldn't help but smack his lips. This trip to Emperor God Palace allowed Ningyu to see how terrifying a high-level plane was. A dozen sages, the palace protecting formation, and a recovered Di Shao. No matter which one it was enough for Ningyu to pay attention to it. The sect behind Yi Jiming is not simple. Moreover, Di Shao only has a superficial wound that can be healed with a few elixirs. The sect behind Yi Jiming wouldn't stop Di Shao on this. Perhaps sensing Ningyu's shock, Human Demon sent a voice transmission. Act more realistically later. Don't let the cat out of the bag. Don't worry, I'll handle it. Speaking of business, Ningyu's expression was still rather solemn. The aura of a late-stage human demon saint could last for another 10 minutes. After that, it would immediately drop to the freezing point. Within 10 minutes, they had to control all the warriors in Emperor God Palace and the palace protecting formation. The task was rather difficult, and Ningyu couldn't afford to be careless. Uncle Chong, Elder, seeing Ningyu and Human Demon, Zhang Kejuan and Di Shao said almost at the same time. Among them, Zhang Kejuan's face was rather pale, or even bloodless. In Zhang Kejuan's opinion, Zhang Chong's return so soon meant that the Zhang family sages in Emperor City were most likely dead. Thinking that all the Zhang family sages had died in Emperor City, Zhang Kejuan had the urge to vomit blood. Relatively speaking, Di Zhao's expression was much better. Among all the sages who descended from the high-level planes, only Yi Jiming thought highly of Di Shao and protected him. Although Yi Jiming had told the rest of the sages to follow Di Zhao's orders before he left for Divine City, they had to listen to Di Shao. But Di Zhao's strength was too weak to suppress so many sages. Everyone seemed to obey Di Shao on the surface, but in fact they were very dissatisfied with Di Shao. Now that Yi Jiming had returned, Di Shao was naturally very happy. Di Xiao didn't care whether He Jiming had killed human demon or not. Right now, all he wanted to do was to stabilize his position and go to the high-level plains as soon as possible. Because Di Xiao and Zhang Kejuan each had their own ulterior motives, they didn't notice anything wrong with Zhang Chong and He Jiming. Boom! Di Xiao even personally ordered the two sages to open the palace protection formation and let Ning Yu and human demon in. Whoosh! Whoosh! Human demon and Ning Yu didn't argue. They flew side by side, and in the blink of an eye, they entered Emperor Palace and headed for the largest hall of Emperor Palace. Seeing Zhang Chong and He Jiming come in, Di Xiao and Zhang Kejuan didn't dare to delay and hurried to catch up. Zhang Kejuan wanted to ask about the Zhang family sages, and Di Xiao wanted to enter the high-level plains earlier. Therefore, Ning Yu and human demon definitely wouldn't be discovered at this stage. As for how long? Chapter 1730. Waiting for you to come in. Before long, Ning Yu and human demon arrived in front of the largest palace in Emperor Divinity Palace. Standing in front of the palace gate, He Jiming waved his hand and said in a clear voice, "What are you all doing here? Go to the palace's defensive formation and guard it. Don't let that traitor Sun Deshun and human devil take advantage of the situation." Yes. As the human demon spoke, he quietly released his mid-stage sage aura. Under the deterrence of a human demon, the surrounding sages were very obedient and obediently retreated to the side of the palace protecting formation. Seeing the saints leave, the demon nodded in satisfaction. He then looked at Di Xiao and said, "Come with me." Di Xiao was overjoyed when he saw He Jiming had asked him to stay behind. He quickly followed the human devil into the palace. Looking at the human devil and Emperor Xiao entering the palace, Ning Yu knew that it was done. As long as the human devil was given half a minute, he would be able to control Di Xiao. According to the plan that Ning Yu and the human demon had discussed before, the human demon would first control Di Xiao, then Di Tianming and Zhang Kejuan. Therefore, Ning Yu's current task was to stall Zhang Kejuan and Di Tianming so that they wouldn't get suspicious. Uncle Chong, the saint of the Zhang family of Emperor's City. After the Di Xiao and the human demon left, Zhang Kejuan could no longer suppress the worry in his heart and hurriedly asked, "Don't worry, they have activated the city protection formation and are now using it to fight against the human demons." Ning Yu interrupted Zhang Kejuan's words and said indifferently. After saying this, Ning Yu looked at Zhang Kejuan, who wanted to say something but hesitated. He thought for a moment and continued. He Jiming left 4 or 5 sages to help, so you don't have to worry about Emperor's City. Hearing this, Zhang Kejuan revealed a relieved expression. As long as the Zhang family saint was fine, Zhang Kejuan did not want to care about anything else. "You can come in." At this time, Di Xiao's voice came from the main hall. Although Di Xiao had called them in, Zhang Kejuan and Di Tianming still rushed into the main hall without stopping. After all, this was Emperor Divine Palace, and Di Xiao was the palace master of Emperor Divine Palace on the surface. Otherwise, the plan to negotiate with Emperor God Palace would be ruined. Boom. However, as soon as Zhang Kejuan and Di Tianming entered the hall, something shocking happened. Di Xiao turned into a blur and charged at Zhang Kejuan at an extremely terrifying speed. Di Tianming's expression changed slightly at Di Xiao's sudden attack. Zhang Kejuan was a half-step saint, while Di Xiao was a saint. Since Di Xiao had attacked Zhang Kejuan so blatantly, Zhang Kejuan definitely had no way to resist. Di Tianming stared at the calm and composed Zhang Chong. The idea of intervening was thrown to the back of his mind. Even Zhang Chong, a martial artist at the middle stage of the sage realm, did not make a move. How could it be his turn to show up? Furthermore, Di Tianming thought that Di Xiao and Zhang Kejuan were just sparring. It was not convenient for him to intervene. Di Tianming was not the only one who thought that Di Xiao wanted to spar with Zhang Kejuan. Even Zhang Kejuan himself thought so. Therefore, Zhang Kejuan did not use his trump card. Instead, he used his physical strength to fight against Di Xiao. Crack. But soon, Zhang Kejuan realized that he was wrong. The power of Di Zhao's punch was extremely powerful. With a single punch, Zhang Kejuan's fist was directly broken. The breaking of his fist made Zhang Kejuan's expression change drastically. He hurriedly wanted to use his trump card. Puff. But how could Di Zhao give Zhang Kejuan the chance to use his trump card? He did not let Zhang Kejuan off. He rushed forward and punched again. This punch landed on Zhang Kejuan's face. The huge force made Zhang Kejuan spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. What did you do to me? Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Zhang Kejuan roared crazily at Di Zhao. Zhang Kejuan naturally did not care about the physical pain. After all, he was a half-step saint and Di Zhao was a saint. But when Di Zhao's fist came into contact with his cheek, a cold light quietly entered his body. It was this cold light that almost drove Zhang Kejuan crazy, because Zhang Kejuan could clearly feel that his life was in someone else's hands. This feeling of his life being controlled by someone else made Zhang Kejuan very uncomfortable. But people under ease had to bow their heads. If Zhang Kejuan wanted Di Zhao to retract the cold light in his body, he had to change his tone. So, Zhang Kejuan took a deep breath and changed his tone. Palace Master Di Zhao, I came here to cooperate with you. I hope you won't make this kind of joke again. Do you think he's joking with you? Human Demon took a step forward and said, if you know what's good for you, shut up as soon as possible. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. While speaking, Human Demon's mind moved and directly triggered the cold light in Zhang Kejuan's body. When the cold light was triggered, Zhang Kejuan let out a hysterical scream. Zhang Kejuan's scream was extremely miserable. If Ningyu hadn't been mentally prepared, he would have probably looked at Zhang Kejuan in a different light. Human Demon had said before that he would use an iron fist to control Di Zhao and Zhang Kejuan. He also said that Zhang Kejuan and Di Zhao were key figures. Once he controlled them, his plan would be halfway to success. Are you going to come over obediently and let me control you, or should I just kill you? After dealing with Zhang Kejuan, Human Demon looked at Di Tianming with interest. I've locked down the hall. You only have two choices now. Surrender or die. Di Tianming's expression was gloomy. To be honest, he was 100 times unwilling to surrender to He Jiming. First of all, He Jiming's cultivation was only one level higher than his. No matter what, Di Tianming was still a peak early-stage sage. Di Tianming's gaze shifted to Ningyu, who was also Zhang Chang in his heart. But at this time, Zhang Chang's expression was indifferent, as if he had already reached some kind of agreement with He Jiming. Di Tianming was in a trance. He didn't know what He Jiming had offered to move Zhang Chang. Could He Jiming have promised to let Zhang Chang reach late-stage sage? Di Tianming didn't dare to think about it. He didn't want to. Sigh. Suddenly, Ningyu sighed. Let's compromise. As soon as Ningyu's voice fell, Human Demon cooperated and released his late-stage sage aura. What? As expected, the moment Human Demon released his late-stage sage aura, Di Tianming's expression changed. He was stunned. Late-stage sage? When did He Jiming reach late-stage sage? No wonder Zhang Chang was on He Jiming's side. He Jiming had long since reached late-stage sage. Everything seemed to make sense now. Shua. Human Demon didn't care whether Di Tianming was in a trance or not. He grasped this rare opportunity and flew to Di Tianming's side. Not good. Seeing He Jiming suddenly appear in front of him, Di Tianming's expression changed. He hurriedly tried to block. Bang. However, it was already too late for Di Tianming to resist. Even though the Human Demon was fighting 1 against 4, he still had the absolute advantage. In just a minute, the Human Demon had subdued the 4 early-stage Sage Realm warriors. A minute and a half later, Di Tianming defeated another sage. Xiao. Although Di Tianming had taken control of the other saint, the Human Demon was still worried. He flicked his finger and a cold light shot out, entering the mind of the saint controlled by Di Tianming. 1 minute and 40 seconds had passed. In this 1 minute and 40 seconds, all 5 saints were under the human demon's control. Their lives were in the human demon's hands. Di Shao, you are the palace lord of Emperor Palace. You should know the Emperor Palace very well. The human demon did not waste any time. After all, he didn't have much time left, so he went straight to the point. You and Di Tianming take 2 early-stage Sage Realm warriors and control all the Emperor Palace late sky, supreme warriors, and above. Di Zhao's heart skipped a beat when he heard the human demon's words. Di Shao was no fool. He knew what the human demon meant by control. If that was the case, then the entire Emperor Palace would have a new owner. Di Zhao's face darkened. He was the palace lord of Emperor Palace. If the Emperor Palace changed owners so easily, how could he face the ancestors of Emperor Palace? How could he face the founding ancestors of Emperor Palace? How could Di Zhao's plan be hidden from the human demon? The human demon had never been merciful to those who did not listen to his orders. Moreover, Di Zhao had attacked him and Ningyu while they were resting. The human demon did not forget this grudge. Puffed, puffed. Without another word, the human demon triggered the cold light in Di Zhao's body, causing him to spit out several mouthfuls of blood. Di Zhao spat out several mouthfuls of blood, and his face turned extremely pale. Last chance. The human demon extended his index finger. I don't want to say it twice. Swish, swish, swish. Seeing that the human demon was enraged, Di Tianming and the other 2 initial Sage Realm cultivators immediately rushed out of the hall. Di Tianming and the other 2 sages were no fools. If they didn't do as Ningyu said, they would end up like Di Shao. Swish! Di Shao glared at the human demon, then flew out of the hall with a face full of unwillingness. The human demon did not care about Di Zhao's murderous glare. If Di Shao wasn't useful to him, he would have killed him long ago. Why would he wait until now? The 3 of you have a simple task. The human demon looked at the 3 shivering sages in the hall. There's still some distance from here to the main entrance of the Emperor Palace. I don't want to see anyone in the middle. Understood. The 3 sages thought the human demon would issue an order, but it turned out that it was just an insignificant one. All 8 Sky Supreme and above cultivators were under the control of Di Shao and Di Tianming. It would be a waste for the 3 sages to stop anyone below that level. Senior human demon, how long will it take for you to recover from the backlash of the Qilin blood? After the last 3 sages left, Ningyu looked at the human demon and asked. As for Zhang Kajuan, Ningyu had no time to worry about him. What Ningyu cared about was how long it would take for the human demon to recover from the backlash of the Qilin blood. After all, it had been half an hour since He Jiming and Zhang Chong left. It wouldn't be long before He Jiming and Zhang Chong returned. What would they do when that happened? About an hour. How could the human demon not know what Ningyu was worried about? But the human demon was helpless. This was the immortal spirit region, and there weren't many elixirs for him to recover. An hour of recovery time was his most conservative estimate. Under normal circumstances, he would need 2 to 3 hours to recover. How about this? Let's go to the Emperor Palace's treasury and see if we can find anything useful. Chapter 1732. The dungeon. That's right. Why didn't I think of that? Hearing Ning Yu's words, human demon was suddenly enlightened, revealing a look of excitement. As one of the top sects in the Sky Demon region, Emperor Palace definitely had a lot of treasures. However, human demon was not particularly interested in the heavenly treasures of the Emperor Divine Palace. What human demon cared about was whether He Jiming had left anything behind. He Jiming was someone from a higher plane, so the things he brought with him would definitely be more precious than the treasures in Emperor Palace. Swish! Swish! Human demon and Ningyu weren't theoretical, but practical. The 2 of them immediately chased after Di Shao. Di Shao was the palace lord of Emperor Palace, so he definitely knew what treasures were in the palace. Therefore, finding Di Shao was the wisest decision. What's wrong? Di Shao tensed up when he saw the travel-worn Ningyu and human demon. His life was in the hands of the human demon. At this time, he didn't dare to show any dissatisfaction to the human demon. Take out all the precious herbs you have in the Emperor Divine Palace. Ningyu went straight to the point. This Di Xiao hesitated. To be honest, he didn't want to take out the precious herbs in Emperor Palace. But when he remembered that his life was in human demon's hands, he immediately said, "There are indeed many precious herbs in Emperor Palace." The Emperor Divine Palace does have a lot of precious medicinal herbs, but they may not be very attractive to warriors of the Saint Realm. If you need them, I can take you to the dungeon to meet someone. He has a very precious medicinal herb. Ningyu frowned slightly, but didn't say anything. Di Xiao didn't care whether Ningyu said anything or not. In his opinion, human demon's attitude was what he was concerned about. "What herb?" Human demon asked. "Ascension grass," Di Xiao answered. "What the F***CK? Human demon swore on the spot, a look of horror on his face. The reason why human demon had such an expression was because the ascension grass was too precious, so precious that it was rare even in a higher plane. In a higher plane, the ascension grass was only in the hands of a few big sects or families. While shocked, the human demon was also very curious. Since the Emperor Divine Palace had caught the martial artist who possessed the ascension grass and imprisoned him in the dungeon, why was the ascension grass still with that martial artist? One had to know that a stalk of ascension immortal grass had the chance to create a martial artist that surpassed the sage level. "Take me there." The human demon took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Human demon knew very well that he couldn't afford to panic at this point. After all, there was not much time left for him. He must find a way to overcome the backlash brought by the Qilin's blood before He Jiming and Zhang Chong came back. Whoosh! After that, Di Xiao led the way, while Ning Yu and the human devil followed closely behind. As for Di Tianming and the other two sages, they went to control the higher-ups of Emperor God Palace obediently and did not dare to slack off. Creak! Following Di Xiao, Ning Yu and the human devil turned left and right, and finally, a minute later, they arrived at the entrance of the dungeon. Di Xiao took out a golden key from his pocket and inserted it into the hole on the stone door. The thick and heavy stone door slowly opened. Originally, Di Xiao wanted to let the human devil and Ning Yu enter first, but when he saw the cold expression on the human devil's face, he immediately moved and entered the dungeon first. Di Xiao was a shrewd man. Although he was the palace master of Emperor God Palace, he did not want to enter the dungeon. In other words, no one from Emperor God Palace wanted to enter the dungeon. To be honest, if it wasn't for the fact that the human devil wanted to plunder the Emperor God Palace's treasury, Di Xiao would not have entered the dungeon like a fool. Because the last time he entered the dungeon, Di Xiao's scalp was still tingling with numbness. Clatter! Not long after Ning Yu and the others entered the dungeon, they heard clattering sounds. Vampire bats. Di Xiao's face was full of fear, and his eyes flickered. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "Senior human demon, these vampire bats are all under the control of the Ascension Grass's owner. If we dare to take even half a step forward, they will attack us." Not only was Di Xiao terrified, but his scalp was also numb. Not long ago, Di Xiao had boasted that he had reached the half-step Saint Realm, so he had rashly entered the dungeon after coming out of the training ground. At that time, if he hadn't run fast enough, he would have become food for the vampire bats. Therefore, Di Xiao still felt a little traumatized when he faced the vampire bats again. What's the cultivation of the Ascension Grass's owner? The human devil stopped and did not continue forward. Instead, he stared at Di Xiao and said doubtfully, "These vampire bats are not weak. Although most of them are at the peak of the Sky Supreme Realm, there are a few that have reached the half-step Saint Realm. They should be mid-stage Saint Realm or even late-stage Saint Realm." Di Xiao suddenly felt a little embarrassed when he mentioned the cultivation of the Ascension Grass's owner. In fact, the reason why the Ascension Grass's owner was imprisoned in the dungeon was because of the founder of Emperor God Palace. It was said that after the founder founded Emperor God Palace, he personally built the dungeon to imprison the Ascension Grass's owner in it. "Go in." The human devil pouted and said faintly. Di Xiao felt like crying when he heard the human devil tell him to go deeper into the dungeon. If he went deeper into the dungeon now, he would definitely face the vampire bats. But he reaped what he sowed. Di Xiao was the one who had caused all of this. Helpless, Di Xiao could only bite the bullet and go deeper. Whoosh! As soon as Di Xiao took a few steps forward, a few vampire bats rushed towards him. Kill! Seeing so many vampire bats flying towards him, Di Xiao's anger flared up. The last time he came here, he was only a half-step Saint Realm expert. This time, he was an early-stage Saint Realm expert. You bullied me when I was a half-step Saint Realm expert. Now that you're an early-stage Saint Realm expert, you still dare to bully me? This was intolerable. Rumble. Di Xiao didn't care about the consequences and directly launched a powerful attack. Whoosh! Under Di Xiao's powerful attack, hordes of vampire bats fell and died on the spot. That's all. Seeing so many vampire bats die in front of him, Di Xiao smirked and said coldly, "If I knew you were so weak, I wouldn't have waited until now. Is that so? It seems like you really want the Ascension Grass." At this moment, a faint voice sounded. "Yes, I really want the Ascension Grass." "No," Di Xiao nodded and said proudly. However, Di Xiao's words came to an abrupt halt. His eyes stared at the depths of the dungeon and said in fear, "Who are you?" Chapter 1733. Chapter 1733. Chapter 1733, Immortal Ascension Grass Thump. The words that entered his ears caused Di Xiao to stagger and almost fall to the ground. Kill Di Xiao and the human devil? What a joke. Right now, Di Xiao's life was still in the hands of the human devil. If the human devil wanted him dead by midnight, he wouldn't be able to live past midnight. Under this premise, Di Xiao naturally would not foolishly make an enemy of the human devil. Humph! Who do you think you are? How dare you order me? Thinking of this, Di Xiao immediately snorted coldly at the depths of the dungeon. This is Emperor Palace, and I am the Palace Master of Emperor Palace. If you know what's good for you, hand over the ascending immortal grass as soon as possible. Otherwise, I will kill you. While speaking, Di Xiao quietly took a few steps back, getting closer to the human devil. Although Di Xiao looked arrogant on the surface, he was actually very nervous. At this time, Di Xiao's heart was a mess, and he was extremely worried. What if the owner of the ascending immortal grass was really angry? Would the human demon stand up for him? Good, very good. You really are arrogant. The owner of the ascending immortal grass wasn't angered by Di Xiao's words. He only left behind a few words before disappearing without a trace. Voila! Not only that, the flock of vampire bats also retreated in unison, disappearing into the depths of the underground prison. Who? Di Xiao couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when he saw the vampire bats disappear. The worry in his heart lessened a little. No matter what, since the owner of the immortal ascension grass was willing to withdraw so many vampire bats, it meant that he was still very afraid of the human demon. As long as the owner of the immortal ascension grass was afraid of the human devil, then this trip to the dungeon would not be particularly dangerous. Lead the way. The human demon gazed into the depths of the dungeon, then turned to Di Xiao and said, "I want to see who the owner of the ascending immortal grass is." To be honest, the human demon had chosen to come to the dungeon to obtain the immortal ascension grass. Even if the human demons wanted to obtain the immortal ascension grass, they would choose to obtain it through legitimate means, such as exchanging immortal crystals or Qilin fruits. But now, the human demon had changed his mind. After all, if it wasn't for the fact that he was powerful, he would have become food in the stomach of the owner of the ascending immortal grass. Survival of the fittest, survival of the fittest. Sometimes you don't want to kill someone, but they'll send their neck and head right in front of you. In this kind of situation, if he still didn't kill him, it would seem a little unreasonable. Sha. Perhaps it was because of the human devil's influence, but Di Xiao's courage suddenly grew. Next, Di Xiao led the way and lit up the passage to the dungeon. After the passage to the dungeon lit up, Ning Yu and the human demon Fong realized that there was another world here. There are actually so many formations. As he walked, Ning Yu's gaze moved around. The passage to the dungeon was not particularly spacious. In fact, it was a little narrow, so narrow that it could only accommodate 2 people at the same time. It didn't matter if it was narrow. The most important thing was that from time to time, a formation would appear on the walls on both sides of the passage. At first, the density of the array formations was relatively small. However, as they continued to go deeper, the density of the array formations increased. There were even many array formations above and below them. Ever since the dungeon was built, these formations have only been opened 3 times. As if seeing the doubt in Ning Yu's eyes, Di Xiao explained, "I don't know the reason for the first 2 times, but the 3rd time, it was because of the owner of the ascending immortal grass." Oh, hearing this, Ning Yu and the human devil raised their eyebrows and looked at Di Xiao in confusion. Being stared at by Ning Yu and the human devil, Di Xiao didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Instead, he continued, "In the past, the owner of the ascending immortal grass wasn't the only person imprisoned in the dungeon. There were at least a few hundred people. A few decades ago, the few hundred warriors imprisoned in the dungeon were all devoured by the owner of the ascending immortal grass in one night. At that time, the owner of the ascending immortal grass only had one goal, which was to use the energy of so many people to break out of the dungeon. However, the owner of the ascending immortal grass clearly underestimated the power of the formations. At that time, all the formations in the dungeon were activated, and the owner of the ascending immortal grass was heavily injured. Since then, the owner of the ascending immortal grass became obedient. Who would have thought that when we came in this time, he would have evil thoughts again?" Hearing Di Xiao's explanation, Ning Yu and the human devil looked at each other and saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. The owner of the ascending immortal grass was treating them like fools. He wanted to devour them and use the energy in their bodies to break the formations. The human devil was now at the late stage of the Sage Realm, while Di Xiao was at the early stage of the Sage Realm. Once they were controlled by the owner of the ascending immortal grass, there was a real possibility that they could break the formations. "We're here." At that moment, Di Xiao suddenly stopped in his tracks and pointed to an empty area in front of him. "The owner of the ascending immortal grass should be in there." Swoosh! Ning Yu and the human devil looked in the direction of Di Xiao's palm. Not far in front of them, there was a slightly empty area. The area wasn't particularly large. Under normal circumstances, it should be the size of a prison cell. This dungeon seems a little small. Ning Yu looked around and felt that something was wrong. The Emperor Palace was one of the top forces. Moreover, Di Xiao had just said that there were originally hundreds of warriors locked in the dungeon. However, along the way, Ning Yu didn't find any room for warriors. The entire dungeon gave Ning Yu the impression that it was a straight passageway. It was not particularly long, and at the end of the passageway, there was a narrow area. This was the dungeon of the Emperor Palace? If this was really the dungeon of the Emperor God Palace, it didn't make sense. Don't be fooled by the illusion in front of you. Before Di Xiao could explain, the human devil said in a deep voice, "The dungeon is indeed very large. However, the dungeon should be under the control of the owner of the ascending immortal grass." Ha ha ha! Right at that moment, a loud laughter was heard. Then, the space split open and a white-haired old man appeared in front of Ning Yu and the others. "Not simple. I originally thought that you were just an ordinary late-stage saint warrior. Now, it seems that I was wrong. Very wrong." The white-haired old man stared at the human devil and said, "If I'm not wrong, you come from a high-level plane. Your real cultivation should be beyond a saint. It's just that you're injured. At first, I wanted to devour you and use the energy in your bodies to leave the dungeon. Now, I've changed my mind. How about we make a deal?" As soon as he finished speaking, the white-haired old man stared straight at the human devil, as if he was eager to know what the human devil was thinking. When the white-haired old man stared at the human devil stared back. "Let's go." Feeling the aura from the white-haired old man, the human devil's face turned pale. In a few minutes, the human devil's cultivation would drop to the freezing point. Moreover, the white-haired old man was a late-stage saint. He was extremely shrewd and would definitely not be able to get the ascending immortal grass in a short time. The human devil knew the consequences of not getting the ascending immortal grass. Therefore, he decided not to stay and turned to leave. Seeing the human devil turn to leave, the white-haired old man's expression changed. Thinking of his current situation, the white-haired old man gritted his teeth and said, "Bring me out of the dungeon, and I'll give you the ascending immortal grass." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.